It's really that ability to break down simple process and procedure. And this goes back into, as crazy as this sounds, you have, 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 3, 2, you're done over at MCRD San Diego when they're yelling at me at boot camp to put my socks on and then take them off and then put them on and take them off and put them on and take them off. I'm like, why in the hell are we doing this? But I think through this now in business, and I'm like, I get to the point where I'll probably annoy people. I talk to them and I ask them the same question 15 times. And I want the same answer 15 times. If I get the same answer 14 times and one of them is different, now we have a problem. Now
why did the answer change?
Exactly. Why did that answer change? And then is there something that I'm missing or that I can pick up on that maybe, like when an artist is painting, he steps back and then he looks at it, or she steps back, looks at it. I missed this part. Okay, back in. Same thing within business and process, but truth be told, I didn't learn this from, definitely not from wrestling, from the military. It's from being told to put my socks on and off 15 freaking times in 1 minute or whatever it is. And then that just continued on, like whether I was, security forces or whether I was in Intel battalion or whether I was with trackers, why do we have to do another stupid gear check, another inventory? Why? Well, we've done it 10 times. Is the number the same 10 times? Yeah. You know why? Because on the 11th time, it probably won't be. And I'm like, son, you got to be kidding me. And everyone loses their mind and like, it is what it is, but it trained me to think this way. Now when I'm speaking to people in business and I'm like, something's not right. Something's not adding up. And if it's not adding up, then I want to know why.
Welcome to the Transition Drill Podcast. I'm your host, Paul Pantiani. I appreciate you taking the time to watch. So let's get into this. Following your social media is like following somebody who's a travel blogger.
Yeah, I think that's part of it. I do it for, honestly, like for myself, like to remember, like Google Photos is awesome, right? Because I look back and it'll say, 1 year ago you were here. 1 year ago you did this. 5 years ago you did this. I'm like, oh damn, I forgot. Like, it's fun. And it's like, people have said that to me. They're like, why don't you make a blog about this? Or why don't you do something with travel based? And I was like, I don't know. I kind of do. I just don't do it for money or for anything else. I just like posting stuff, but it's like my journal for me.
Do you use it or do you incorporate it as a part of your business? I know the travel is related to your work, right? But do you, because some of the pictures that you post are amazing, the picture themselves.
I've seen awesome stuff, right? Like, and I think that it is part of the business or the marketability of what I do for work is to say, well, where's Butch? Like he's in Sofia, Bulgaria, or he's in Malta, or he's in Israel, or he's in San Diego. Like that's what's kind of cool about it is it's like, I post things and people are everywhere. Even in the industry I work in, like in affiliate marketing in this world, they're like, what do you do? Like, they don't know. And my answer is, I think I probably even have it still on my LinkedIn. It's like, if you have to ask me what I do, then I'm doing a really good job. I don't want you to know.
It is actually still that. No, I love that saying.
Like, if you have to ask me, then I'm doing a good job. And I'm just a connector. I just know different parts of the industry and like how these things work, how this person should talk to this person. And my agreement usually with them is like, hey, you guys meet, shake hands in person now that I know each of you and trust each of you. And if you go make a bunch of money, like remember me when. Sometimes they do, most times they forget. But
hey, it's all a percentage game.
Yeah, it's fun.
As long as you get a small percentage remembering you.
Exactly. Like it's it's usually like a fractional percentage of people that are like, oh, I remember when I spoke to you, you introduced me to so-and-so. I need that guy now. I'm like, yeah, I know. That's why I introduced you without any regard to business years ago. That's a good person. That's a good person. You guys should meet, hang out, have a good time, whatever it may be. And then years down the road, sometimes it ends up that they end up doing business together and it's awesome. It's like, and that's cool. Like, glad you guys met.
And I've even tried doing that with this podcast. I'll interview one person and they're in one aspect or line of work. And then I'll meet somebody down the road and I go, talk to this person.
Yeah, you guys should speak. It happens all the time.
And it's just, it's a way of just kind of giving back, if nothing, well, for me, from the podcast aspect of it. But for you, I can see how it has, and I'm not naive to it. It will also have a long-term benefit to me for the podcast if I've got people talking about my podcast.
100%, right? Like,
bring that mic just a little bit closer to your mouth for me.
Okay. I did a podcast with Mitch Aguiar, and Mitch is, his Navy SEAL and just absolute killer. MMA guy, runs a supplement company, he's a jiu-jitsu black belt. Like, he's an absolute killer. And we were talking about that, and he goes, I was like, what do you want to do with the podcast? He does a thing like called The Mitch Show. He just gets on and usually just rants.
Right.
And I said, there's two ways to look at this. Like, Instagram, he had like 300,000 followers or something on Instagram, and they shut him down. But his rants were very anti-COVID, very anti-government, very anti this, that, and the other. And it crippled his business. And I said, you can't be an asshole all the time. Like, your brand is, and he was like, well, I don't care. And I was like, you do care if people stop buying your stuff.
Right.
You know what I mean? Or if Instagram shuts down a 300,000 follower account, you do care. I promise you'll care, because that's going to hurt your business. And he was just like, no, it's not that bad. It's whatever. I was like, yes, it is, man. Like, I'm telling you, it's that bad. Sure enough, he gets shut down, and then now he's like scraping to get people back in and whatever. And I was like, and it's definitely impacted his business. So it can go both ways. I mean, notoriety and being able to be in front of people is cool if you use it correctly, but some people just don't. They find a way to hurt themselves with it.
And you can take that in so many different angles. And I'll use myself as an example in law enforcement.
Yep.
You're very much under a microscope. If you want to be that officer who's on social media doing the jokes and the funny videos and stuff, you have to understand that to a portion of society, it's going to be taken the wrong way, and it's going to have a negative impact on you.
Right.
At the same token, there's the other thing you're fighting. When Mitch has his own business, he can create his own social media policy, and he's not curtailed by his organization. But that's the other thing too, is if your organization has a restrictive social media policy, you trying to use that thing of, well, it's my personal account, you're still ultimately representing the organization, and then you start walking that gray line.
Yeah, I mean, and I've fought that battle before, where I'm like, I'm joking around like I'm an HR nightmare, because I'm like, I say something online or whatever, and people are like, you can't say that. I'm like, I'm going to say it. I'm just probably not a very good employee for you. You know what I mean? And that's kind of how it is. And I don't want to be offensive or abrasive to people, but if I have an idea or something and I believe in it strongly, it probably is going to come out in some capacity on social media somewhere, somehow. And, it's like companies I've been with or whatever, they're like, yeah, like, you can't post that. I'm like, I'm posting it. Like, fire me. Not that I don't really work for anybody now, but
right.
It's like fire me.
And if you're fortunate enough to be in a position to where you could take that leverage, and you're like, hey, I can find other work. You're not the you're not the only plate on the table.
Exactly. So it's a crazy concept. Social media in and of itself is wild. You can reach out and touch anybody at any time, from extreme levels of fame to whoever. It's like everybody's got something online, and I mean, looking at employees or like whatever. I'm like, I used to look at resumes, now I won't even look at them. Somebody's like a job opening or something that I think somebody's got. I'm like, I'm going on their social media. I'm going to go find them.
Right.
It's very easy to find them.
It's almost kind of weird today when you have somebody who doesn't have a social media presence.
Yeah, like what are you
hiding?
What are you hiding? Exactly. Like, wait a second, something doesn't mesh. I mean, I had my Instagram account stolen a few months ago, and it actually came from a military guy I'd served with, and it was like, hey, I needed help, basically. And I was like, okay, I responded. And it was a hacker. His account had been stolen, and, whatever it was. And I didn't know how to get it back. And I kind of just like wrote it off. I was like, I'll just start it again. I'll just do a different one. And truth be told, I was going to do something like a travel blog. Like, that's what I was just going to start back up. And I started digging into it, and I was like, you know what? I'm going to try to get this back. So I looked up and found the head of privacy for Instagram, her personal cell phone number. I bought it. And I sent a text. I just texted her. I said, hey, you so-and-so and so. And she's like, yeah. And I go, all right, well, my Instagram account was stolen, and I'm pissed. And this is and she said, essentially, this is my personal cell phone, not my problem. I have it now.
Right.
And I'll post it. If anybody, because I know other people have had their phone, I'll post it. I'll post your personal cell phone number. on any other social media platform, and I'll blow your phone up just to do it. So if your job is to be head of privacy and my privacy has been hacked, you need to fix it, or your team needs to fix it, something like that. And it wasn't 20 minutes later, all of a sudden my account was fixed. You know what I'm like? But that's the power. I mean, the internet's great. Like, it's like you can find anything on anybody. You know, a resume comes in and they're like, I did this and this and this and this and this. Okay, well, let me check. And I check and it doesn't mesh. It doesn't add up. I'm like, they're gone. I'm not going to spend any time with them. They're not being truthful in their resume or whatever it may be. I mean, plus anybody can fake a resume. Let's make it look amazing. Right. You know, like, what'd you really do? You know, like, come on.
Well, and you bring up a great point though, too, is if you are somebody who's in the career world and you're looking to make your transition, you know, hence the name of the podcast, you need to be mindful of what you're curating on your social media page. Because like you said, many companies today, their first stop is doing research on you before you even come in for the interview.
Exactly. Yeah.
And so like if you present a resume that makes you all clean and pretty, but the other side, the social media side, is you know, drunk at a bar every weekend.
Degenerate. You're right. And then it's like, wait a second, something doesn't add up.
You have to be mindful.
Yeah.
You talked about something previously where you said, you know, you just want somebody to remember your name, and Butch is obviously a very unique name. And I say that because I went to school with a Butch. Only one I've ever known, but that wasn't his real name. Is that your given name?
Not my given name.
Okay.
Yeah, so I'm a junior, so it's crazy. I don't know how I got the name Butch.
He didn't either.
Yeah, I have no idea. Lawrence David is my first and middle name. I'm a junior, so I'm like, all right. I went by Butch to the point, like, you know, like grade school, like kindergarten, first grade, they say your name, like so-and-so, or they hear, and then if you hear your name, you raise your hand. I wouldn't even raise my hand because I just knew my name was Butch, right? And then Lawrence was my given name, so Larry would be short, so they would call Larry, and I'm like, that's not me. You know, that's my dad. And I'm like, well, it's not me. I'll just sit here. And I mean, I was talking to people yesterday, and they were like, how did you get it? And I said, the only problem with Butch and then Hildebrand, my last name, it's two soft sounds. So Butch Hildebrand, it's really hard to say. It just kind of blends together when I say it fast. And I was like, that's pretty hard. And I was like, and then I spent a lot of time in Spanish-speaking countries, and they cannot say the name Butch. It's impossible. And so and I'm in Latin America, it's Toro Blanco, like White Bull. I'm a Taurus, and I'm a Gringo. So it just works there, like Toro Blanco. And I'm like, and they can say that perfectly. It doesn't really convey so much here in the United States, but
right.
Yeah,
it sounds cool when you're there.
Yeah. So all my LLCs, like my Wi-Fi, everything is Toro Blanco. And they're like, what? I'm like, it's a long story. So that's fun. But yeah.
Where is hometown for you? Where'd you grow up?
I grew up in Eaton, Ohio. Eaton, Ohio is a town like maybe they might have 8,000 people there now. It's right on the border of Ohio and Indiana on I-70, which cuts right across the United States, right in the middle of Ohio. That's where I grew up. It's a small town. Like it's one of these places where I think it voted probably like 92% Republican forever.
So very liberal.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Crazy. Yeah, I mean it's like, you know, and I'm not political. I'm right in the middle. I don't care. But it's just a place you grew up, like, just, you know, farms that have been in the same family for 200 years, and there's plenty of them. My school district was massive, and we had 200 kids in my graduating class. Actually, 199 because I was 99, and I was in the top half of the class. Not a great student, but.
Did you come from a family of farmers? I mean, like generational?
No, my dad was a teacher, and my mom worked at a law firm. So as weird as it was like, I'm like, how did we end up here?
Did we break down?
Yeah, like what happened? And my dad went to Ohio University, and then he took a job in Wilmington, Ohio, and then I think he was getting his master's or something. He was an English teacher, and he met the basketball coach of this small town, Eaton, and they said, hey, we have an opening for a football coach as an assistant. And my dad's like, well, I've never played football, and I've never wrestled either. And he said, well, fun. We have a wrestling coach job open too, and an English position. So he went and then started teaching English, and then before he knew it, he was coaching wrestling, football, and tennis.
But never played
any
football.
No, like, And he goes, it's not that hard. You just got to look at the plays and figure it out. And he coached the offensive line and defensive line for the local team, local high school. And he's like, I go, how'd you know this? He goes, football's on all the time. What did linemen do? They just stand up. And he made it simple.
Push.
Yeah, exactly. Like, how do you get better? And he was like, I don't know. We're going to go hit the blocking sled over and over and over until they get in better shape and they're stronger than the team that we're playing. So, yeah, it was crazy. My dad was like super hippie. He went to Woodstock. Not like hippie. He's like super artsy.
Woodstock original or Woodstock
original,
light?
Original.
Wow.
In 1969. And he used tickets. He was a very straight arrow guy. Like, he actually used tickets when nobody else there. And I was like, why wouldn't you keep those? He goes, we didn't know that this was happening. We had no idea.
Hindsight is
turned into whatever.
2020. I mean, how many things have you thrown away in your life? You're like,
seriously,
Jesus, I wish I would have kept that.
Yeah, and I was like, that's awesome. You're at Woodstock. He was like, that's the first concert I ever went to. That was his.
Was he from upstate New York?
No, he was from Martins Ferry, Ohio, which is like exact opposite side of the state that I grew up on. So he was on the West Virginia, Pennsylvania, Ohio, like tri-state area, right on I-70, like one exit, like 1 mile from the exit of I-70, exact opposite side of the state is where I grew up. So, he was like super liberal and like super liberal. He was like the 8%, probably voted Democrat, but he, like, how did we end up, like, we could have went anywhere, and he's like, yeah, I don't know. And then they lived there until my dad died a few years ago, and until he died. And then my mom moved back to where they grew up, the other side of the state. So
they were both from Ohio.
My mom is from West Virginia. My
right
dad's
on the
from
border.
Ohio, but yeah, within 2 minutes of each other.
Right.
So, and then, so she's back in West Virginia, and I'm like, even that, I mean, I make fun of her because I'm like, it's West Virginia. Like, come on. What are you doing? And she's like, this is my hometown.
It's principle.
Yeah, it's my hometown. I'm like, it's still West Virginia. And not to bag on West Virginia because I actually love it. It's just, there's some perception or, it's like Appalachia and hillbillies and teethless and
driving through this country, I've never seen the color green as vibrant as I have in West Virginia.
It's beautiful. I mean, it's awesome. Like, you can go whitewater rafting, you can go camping, like, it's awesome stuff there. Not to mention it's super cheap. Like, my grandma died, I don't know, like 6-7 years ago now, and they sold her house when she went into a nursing home, and they sold it for $15,000. A whole house for $15,000, like functioning with like an air conditioning unit and everything, like central air and heat and a roof and running water. I was like, $15,000. Can you buy a car for that? But it was crazy to see it. And I'm just going to move here. I'm just going to buy a house here. And then when I'm in town, I'll just fly out of Pittsburgh, which is 30 minutes away. And then, just live in West Virginia. Like, why? I'm like, well, I'm never here anyway, so I may as well just spend $15,000 on a house and
place to store your garbage.
Exactly. Yeah, I mean, that's really. But that's the upbringing.
Brothers, sisters?
I have one older sister, and she's in Cincinnati. She's a neonatal nurse. And then, my mom's retired and dad's dead, and I do whatever it is that I do, I guess.
So growing up, were you a good kid? Were you kind of rambunctious, getting into trouble?
My dad was super strict, and because it was a small town, everybody knew everybody. My mom worked for the one attorney who did any capital cases, so any murder cases, and because we were right on the border of Ohio and Indiana, a lot of times people would get picked up bringing drugs into Ohio from Indiana on I-70. So that's interstate trafficking or, cross
right.
whatever. So we got to know, the sheriff, police chief, they were all that side. And then the education side, everybody knew my dad because he was a teacher and a coach. So, and so he either taught their kids or coached them in some capacity.
Was he your teacher too?
What's that?
Did you end up having your dad as your teacher?
My sister did too. 11th grade English. And because at our school you had to have 4 years of English to graduate, and he was the only 11th grade English teacher. So I had him too. And my sister did, and I was like, how was it? Everyone's like, you're going to get a pass. I'm like, not easy. Because I said, you guys have to deal with him for 1 hour a day. I have to deal with him 1 hour a day in the classroom. Then he's my coach. And then I got to go home and deal with him again. It was crazy. And my sister was really good student. Me, not so much. I think I'm smart, maybe smarter.
Just not applying yourself?
I kind of just got bored with it. Like I was really good at math until letters started getting involved, which means pre-algebra. I'm like, I don't know what's happening here. When I was growing up, I didn't get a very good foundation in math, to be honest with you. I tested into this gifted program. And so the one class that I missed from like 3rd grade to 6th grade was math. I would get pulled out to go do weird stuff in this gifted program. And I'm like, so then when math started to get hard, I really wasn't great at it. And the rest of the stuff I pencil whipped right before the paper was due. I'm writing real fast and throwing it in. Did not apply myself scholastically or academically at all.
Did you at least apply yourself in your dad's class?
So I'm actually like a decent writer, so that helped. I mean, it helped that my dad's a really good writer, so that helped. I'm relatively creative where I can put something in. But I remember we had an English like a research paper we had to do, and I got an A for content, a B for like grammar and punctuation or whatever it was, and an F for like documenting my sources. And I referred to everything. He was like, "You didn't document anything." And I said, "That is
giant opinion paper."
Exactly. He's like, I'm like, "This is common knowledge." He goes, "That is not common knowledge." I said, "Dad, we have spoken about this multiple times." He goes, "It's common knowledge to you, but it's not common knowledge to the person that's reading this paper." And I said, "Well, the only person reading the paper is you, and it is common knowledge." I mean, these are the arguments we had to have, and it was like, but my best friends, my teammates, everybody, we all had them in the same class, and we're like, and I remember my buddy Johnny Reddick was like, he like wouldn't do his homework or whatever, and he was like, "Hey, can you get your dad off topic?" And I'm like, 2 seconds, watch this. I'm like, "Dad, you remember that time we were going to Grandma's house and some family story?" And then he goes on a 45-minute talk about whatever he's doing, and I'm like, and my buddy Johnny's like, "Oh my, thank God." So yeah, super fun. It was cool growing up like that. And then like even my mom working in for the attorney that she worked for, I got to do super cool stuff. So like he got the capital murder cases, so death penalty cases. I got to go sit in the courtroom. I got to read the files. I got to go with the attorney and go sit and talk to murderers.
Oh wow!
When I'm in high school, as like a internship type thing, like. There was a guy, Dennis McGuire. He raped and killed an 8 or 9 month old pregnant lady. They actually found her in my buddy Johnny Reddick's lawn, or like in his woods, right? But, and he was, I think he may have been the last executed person that Ohio's done in a while. It happened a few years ago, but they botched the execution. Something happened when they gave a lethal injection and they messed up. So this guy, Dennis McGuire, gets put down. But I went to his trial. I went to closing arguments. I went to his sentencing. I got to see all this stuff. And then I got to look through the files.
But your mom was working for the prosecutor's office or the defense attorney defending it?
Defense attorney. So, and I was asking my mom, I'm like, how many of these people are guilty? She's like, 100% of them. Like, listen. And I'm like, drug trafficking, she's like, 100% are guilty. Like, why? And I was like, well, the town I had that growing up, we had one African-American family, one. And the entire, now they had 27 kids. Most of them, I think like 25 were adopted. So like one African-American family, and then the rest of our school was 100% white as white gets. White farmers from stinking Ohio. So not racially diverse. We didn't, I didn't know like the craziest things. Like I couldn't explain what being Jewish was. I didn't know. I had no idea what that meant. Like, is that a religion? Yeah. Is it a race? How does this break down? I had no idea. But my mom, and she worked for the defense attorney, and it was like, I go, man, how do you morally deal with trying to get people off? They're guilty. And I talked to the attorney about that, and he's like, listen, it's not that they're guilty or not guilty. It's, are they guilty of what they are alleged to have done? And by the letter of the law, did they do it exactly as that, right? So, right. The difference between murder, 1, and murder 2, or manslaughter, or whatever, well, that goes down to the definition, and that's really what you have to look at the facts of the case and whatever. So, it was cool to see that, like, to think the process that they would go through as an attorney. Like, I kind of always wanted to be an attorney growing up. I was like, this would be great. Like, and then I was like, okay, I went to college. I didn't know what to do. I'm like, what am I going to do? I want to be an attorney. but I just went to wrestle. That was that. You know, didn't really work out.
Well, there's a nice segue, because those who are watching, even though the earphones are covering it, your ear will give away that you've spent some time on the mat.
Mangled. My ears started getting bad when I was 12 years old. And so to be a 12-year-old with disgusting cauliflower ear wasn't fun. You know, because I'm like in junior high school, nobody knew what cauliflower ear was. I was just a weird looking ear kid. And now with UFC and MMA and jiu-jitsu and all these guys have mangled ears now, it's like I walk around like, are you a fighter? I'm like, no. I'm 45 years old. I've had this for 30 some years. Like,
I was doing this before it was cool.
Yeah, well before it was cool. You know, I'm like going to junior high dances and I can't get a girl to go with me because my ears are screwed up, and it's like, the hell am I doing, man? And my mom was like, you got to get them fixed. I don't want your ears messed up. And I was like, Mom, I'm still wrestling. They're going to get bad again. So I just never got them fixed. And then it kind of became cool. And now, I mean, even last night I was out and people were like, I think people look at me and they're like, oh, he's probably a fighter. And I'm old enough now that they're like, they ask me and I'm like, I'm just an old, washed up, whatever.
UFC 2.
Yeah, exactly. Right. Which I just watched UFC 10 the other day. I watched the whole thing, and it was like when they had like a tournament, and I was like, man, these guys suck. They're so bad. Mark Coleman won it, and Mark was a wrestler at Ohio State, which, and I actually, when I was in high school, I committed to go to Ohio State, to go wrestle there. And then that's actually a funny story, but, Mark was there, Mark was there training.
There's a funny story on how you committed to Ohio State?
Yeah. So my wrestling club coach was a guy named Jim Jordan. And he's Congressman Jim Jordan now.
Okay.
Like, they just voted for him for Speaker of the House. That guy. Okay. Like a political assassin when it comes to being a conservative. So he was my wrestling club coach, and he was Ohio State's assistant coach. And my senior year, I was like, I'm going to go to Ohio State and wrestle for Jimmy. Like, my family knew him and whatever. And then he won a seat in the Ohio House, so he resigned. When he resigned, I was like, well, I had 5 official visits I could take, and that meant 5 days out of school, which I definitely didn't want to go to school. So I was like, all right, well, I'm going to take my visits, and ended up going to Indiana. And I went to Indiana. I was like, had a great visit, and then I went there on the weekend. And like Tuesday or Wednesday, I went to Ohio State, and I kind of was like, I'm closing out all my visits, and then I'm going to go to Ohio State and just sign and go be a Buckeye. And I went out on a Tuesday. And this is postseason, wrestling was done, and all the Buckeye wrestlers went out, like, to bar, and they took me, and I'm like 17 years old. I'm like in bars, drinking my face off, like, what is happening here? Horribly sick the next day. Like, my parents were there, and I was like,
but you had the ears, you fit in.
I fit in. They got me in the bar, they got me super drunk, and it wasn't good. Needless to say, Russ Hellickson was the head coach at the time at Ohio State. They still wanted me to go to Ohio State. And I thought to myself, if I am here on a Tuesday and this is happening, there's no way I'll graduate. There's no way I'll get through this. I didn't know that most colleges do this. I didn't know that other people
go out on This is college life.
This is college life. I didn't know. I mean, I'm from a small town. I had no idea what was happening. And I was like, maybe Ohio State's too big. And Indiana in Bloomington is like, this is a quaint little college town. And I knew the coaching staff at Indiana as well, and it just ended up that I was like, I think I'm going to go to Indiana. Like, I think it's going to be a safer play. Like I said, I didn't know that they did that at Indiana too, and every other college, every other university, they do the same thing. Wrestling postseason, they're done wrestling, they're going out. Like, I didn't know.
I'll cut weight later.
Exactly. And so it ended up at I didn't go to Ohio State, went to Indiana, and then it was like probably a better decision. Probably. I think.
But so it sounds like you were really committed to your wrestling. If it was a concern of yours that, man, all the other wrestlers are going to be out drinking, I don't want to be in that realm.
Yeah. Truth be told, when I was in high school, I didn't go out, I didn't whatever. I wrestled. And I didn't get serious about wrestling until really my sophomore year. I had been wrestling since I was 5, so I was pretty good at it, but I didn't really get serious about it because in my hometown, the best thing you could do is play on the football team. And if you could start on the football team, you were like gold in this small town. It's like Friday Night Lights syndrome. That's exactly what it was. And so my sophomore year, I started on the football team. There were 3 of us that started as sophomores. and I was a linebacker, and I'm like, okay, this is cool. And then I had a really good season as a wrestler. I was like, I don't know, like 30-5 or something as a sophomore. And I'm like, I might be good at this. Yeah, I'm really like, I might actually be good at this. And because it came pretty easy to me. And I was like, I'm not really training that hard. I'm winning. And I didn't make the state tournament. I was crushed. And I was like, man, I just got to make the state tournament. That was like the biggest thing you could do in my hometown is make the state tournament. And we had one guy, this guy, Josh Cruz, had won the state. And he was like off the charts. He went to Ohio State and wrestled. Like he was as good as it gets. Like nobody can be like Josh Cruz.
Right.
And then I started thinking about it. I'm like, I mean, if I didn't really train and I was 30-5 or something like this, like what if I actually applied myself? In my junior year, I had a really good year. Went to the state tournament. And I drew a returning state champion first round, and I'm like, you got to be kidding me. So I lost a close one to him, and then I dropped in the consolation bracket, and then my first round in consolation happened to be a guy who had illegally slammed somebody in his first round, so he dropped down. He was returning state finalist. So I had 2 losses, returning state champ, returning finalist, and the guy won it again. He ended up winning the second title. And I, you know.
Nothing like starting at the top of the mountain and working your way up.
And I went doing barbecue. Like, I'm out. Like, what am I going to do now?
Where's the bar?
Yeah, exactly. In this high school. And then my senior year, I was undefeated and won state title. But I knew going into it, like, I have the skill set to do it. I just have to wrestle. And, and it was like, I mean, as weird as it sounded, it kind of came easy. When I went to college, I was so focused. I mean, I've had this conversation so many times, and I'm like, if you would have told me that wrestling didn't end when you win a state title, that you really should go to college and go try to be a national champion, All-American or whatever it was, nobody ever told me that. I didn't even know if that was possible, right? I still went to a Big Ten university and wrestled, you know, like my first round match at Big Tens as a freshman, I wrestled a guy named Lincoln McElravy, who was an Olympic silver medalist. You know, that was my first round. I'm like, it happened again. Like, oh, just get the best guy, you know, 3-time national champ. Like, I guess I'll have him. But it was weird because I was raised in a place where lofty goals weren't ever really taught. That you weren't ever like taught to be like, you wanted to be a varsity football player, not go play in the NFL. That was too big. Where I'm from, that's too big. You know, nobody does that. You know, and I think that there's probably a lot of places in America or all over the world that people sell themselves short on. Like, you can have lofty goals, but you need a support team around you telling you, or at least helping you convince you, like, you can go do this.
Right.
And a lot of that's changed, and that's like sports psychology and whatever. I mean,
one of the detriments, though, I would imagine, then, of that small town living in the sense that a lot of people don't look beyond that town.
They have no idea. They have no idea what's out there. When I went to Indiana, it's only 2 hours away from where I grew up, and it was like,
the other side of the world.
Totally different world. Like, what is this? I'm like, I saw a guy holding hands with a guy for the first time in my life in college. And I was like, what is this? Like, where am I? You know, wild to me. Like, now I care less. Then, though, it blew my mind. I'm like, this is crazy. I met my first Jewish friend. I'm like, what is this? Like, oh my gosh. Like, this is wild to me. And then it was like that was a crazy, 5 years in college and then military happened.
Going into college, obviously you went there to wrestle, and you'd mentioned having some aspirations of maybe being an attorney. But what were you thinking for adulthood for yourself at that point in time?
No idea. None. I mean, zero. I went to college to be a wrestler. I wanted to maybe be an attorney because I thought, or get into law enforcement or criminal justice or something like that. So my first year I studied, it sucks because you're an athlete. You go and I'm like, I don't really know what I want to do. And like, oh, you're an athlete. Oh, you're a wrestler. Okay, you're going to take health, physical education, and recreation courses. So I took the whole first year. I'm like, what am I going to be with this? And they're like, you're going to be like a park ranger or like a health teacher. You're going to go be a coach or whatever it was. I'm like, I don't want to do this. So my second year, I didn't listen to the academic advisors, and I started taking all criminal justice courses, like sociology and criminal behavior, and like I was really, really into it. And then the third year, in order to retain your scholarship, you have to be enrolled in a college at the university. So like the College of Business or the College of Arts and Sciences or whatever it may be. and I didn't, and because health, physical education, and recreation was on one side, and then the other one was like more of a socially, College of Arts and Sciences or physical education. I didn't have enough credits to get in either school because I didn't listen, right? And I'm like, well, what am I going to do? And they're like, well, we have another opportunity for you. And I was like, what's that? And they're like, you could get a degree in general studies. And I was like, well, what is that? And I'm like, first of all, is that a real degree? It really is. And I'm like, okay, well, is this like adult education? They're like, here's the kicker. You can study anything you want.
Just get this many units?
As long as you have the credits, you're good. And I'm like, well, can I get in that school? They're like, everyone gets in that school. And I was like, well, that sounds like the school for me. And even so, like when I got done with college, I had no idea what I wanted to do. My dad was a teacher, so I thought maybe I'll go back and get a master's in education or get a teaching certificate and go be a teacher. And I started looking into it, and I could go be a substitute teacher in Indiana with a degree and make $100 a day, which to me was like $1 million a day because I had no money. I mean, I went to college. I had no money. Like I had a can of corn and a can of green beans, probably like 24 beers in the fridge, but like no money, it was wild. So I was like, if I have $100, I'm like, I'm rich. Like I have $100 a day, I'm rich. And because I was a substitute teacher, I could only, if I wanted to work 3 days or 2 days or no days or all 5 days. And so I did. So yeah, I was like, okay, I'm going to be a teacher. Like this is going to be great. And I was teaching kindergarten as a sub, which
let's get the mats out.
Yeah, exactly. What are you doing? Like, we're going to do push-ups today or whatever it was. But I was still training. I was still going to the restroom all the time because I was still employed in Indiana. And September 11th happened. I was teaching school to kindergartners. And I kind of sat down and was like, what the hell am I doing? Like, I'm a Division I college wrestler handling kids that are 4 and 5 years old. What am I doing? Like, this is not me. And truth be told, I didn't really want to be a teacher. My dad, with him being a teacher growing up, it was like, the thing you don't want to do is get into doing anything with business. Don't do that. You're not going to have retirement. People lose their jobs, and then once you lose your job, you're out. You like, don't get into business. Don't do anything with business. Okay. So if you're not in business, and I wasn't academically inclined with the math side, I wasn't going to be an engineer and a doctor. I'm like, maybe law school, but that seemed really hard at the time. And I also had to take the LSAT or whatever to get in. I'm like, I'm not passing that. I didn't apply myself for the last 5 years of college. So I'm like, maybe teaching is the best path for me. And then, I'm sitting there watching planes fly into buildings with kindergartners. And I'm like, what am I doing with my life? Like, there's way bigger things out there than teaching kindergarten. Not that it's not an admirable profession.
Just wasn't for you.
Me. And, so the next day I went to the recruiter. I had no idea what I was doing with the military. None.
Do you have any military in your family?
None. The only thing that I know in my family with the military was we had this lady, Sarah Barker Brandon. You can look her up. She was, I think at one time, maybe the oldest person living in the world. Was my 4-time removed great-grandma. And she, if you look up Mother of the Civil War, that's her.
Oh. So
she had 16 children fought in the Civil War, 2 with the Confederacy, 14 with the Union, 14 boys, or 16 boys.
Wow.
And it's a crazy thing with my family. Like, she had married her husband, Charles Brandon. He was 76. She was 16. And then they had all these kids, and he had already had 16 kids. So it was really weird. And this is in West Virginia, so I don't want to bag on West Virginia, but there's a good chance that the father and the son, I don't know, who knows what was happening. Really, really crazy. And then she died at the age of 113 in 1912. So you can imagine, she very possibly was the oldest person in the world.
Right.
But then I had, a couple uncles, maybe who got drafted in World War II or whatever it was. But I told my dad was a hippie. He was at Woodstock. So no military. And my uncle moved to Canada when the draft happened in the Vietnam War, or the American War if you're in Vietnam. He went to Canada and he was in business, which is crazy it was. I think my dad just hated him. Was pissed, or whatever. And my dad,
was your dad too old for the draft or too young for the draft?
No, he was playing backyard touch football. and was running, and he stepped in a hole and shattered his ankle like 6 months before he got drafted, and he didn't pass the physical. And they're like, he's like, I could have had a broken arm. They would have put me in. He was like, my ankle's smashed. And they're like, he didn't pass the physical. So he wasn't like at Woodstock saying like, screw the war.
He was just there listening to music.
I don't even think he knew that there was a concert going on. I mean, he was just like, oh, I guess we're going to Woodstock. And
there's a bunch of my friends going.
Yeah, it's the first concert I've ever been to. And I asked him how it was. He was like, it was miserable. He was like, 3 days you couldn't get out. You couldn't do anything. You couldn't escape. You couldn't pee. I mean, you could. It was just super dirty. He was like, it was miserable.
From the outside looking in, it seemed like a cool concert to be at.
Yeah.
When you're just thinking about the performers that were there.
Hippies, performers, the Hells Angels, like what is happening? But, it was an event and hear him tell the story. So, yeah, I went to the recruiting station on September 12th and said, I don't know what I'm doing here. And I kind of peeped in, and it was like Army, Air Force, Navy, Marine Corps, Coast Guard, all in one building.
In a strip mall?
Yeah. I walked in and I was like looked around and I didn't see anybody. And then a Marine recruiter came out, Staff Sergeant Van Hoy. I remember his name even. He came out and he was like kind of a little guy. And he's like, how can I help you? And I was like, I saw something bad happen yesterday, and I figured I don't really have any real plans to do anything with my life or having been to college, and I'm not wrestling anymore, so what should I do? And he was like, think you can do any pull-ups? And I was like, dude, I'm a Division I wrestler. Like, I wrestled in the Big Ten. It's the best conference in the country. How many pull-ups do you want me to do? He's like, well, they got to be strict. And I was like, come on, man. Like, get out of here. Like, yeah, of course I'll do pull-ups. And I think he goes, you can do 20. And I just did, 20 strict dead hang pull-ups. And I dropped off and I was like, you got anything else? I'm like kind of teasing him. And he goes, so you want to be a Marine? And I'm like, I don't know what I'm doing. What job do I get? And I started, and this recruiter will tell you anything. He's like, you're going to get free travel. You're going to get this. And in my mind, I still thought maybe if I do this, I can go be an attorney. Right, like maybe the Marine Corps or the military will teach me, and I can go be, work in that line or law enforcement or criminal justice within the military, and then that might transition me into being an attorney. And I was like, okay, cool, like let's do it. I went home and called my parents and told them, and not good.
Not supportive?
Not supportive. No, my mom is crying. You're gonna die, because they just saw the same thing happen with September 11th. And my dad was like, why? Like, you went to college, man. Like, why would you? And I was like, well, I don't know what else to do. And then I said, and also I could wrestle for the Marine Corps. Like, I could do that. That could be my job. They told me that I could go be a wrestler for the Marine Corps. And my dad's like, okay, like, maybe. And then
with a college degree, was there ever the thought of going in as an officer?
Yeah. And so that was the conversation. I said, he goes, do you want to be an officer? Or do you want to be enlisted? I'm like, I don't know what that means. I didn't know. And he said, I go, what's the process? And he was like, well, with officer candidate school, you have to go to OCS. He's like, it's about 6 to 8 months before we can get you that way. And it's a totally different recruiter and whatever it is. And I was like, okay, well, what's this? What's the other one? I didn't even know what enlisted meant. What's the other one? And he goes, man, we can get you there in about 3 days. And I was like,
sign me up.
Yeah, and he goes, but, there's a lot more money on the officer side. And I looked, and he goes, it was like at the time, like my salary as like an E1 was like $1,960 a month or something. And O1 was like $1,960, like $1,000 more. And I was like, he goes, but, the thing is, everything's free. I was like, well, what do I care? Remember, I was making $100 a day, and I thought I was rich.
Right.
Well, now I got to make almost $1,000 a month. I'm super rich in my mind. Like, this is going to be great. I got to travel all over the world for free whenever I want. Like, and I'm thinking I could just go up to the airport and call Delta and walk on. I didn't know. I had no idea.
I'm heading to Hawaii.
Exactly. That's what I thought. And so, that happened. And then, as odd as it sounds, they filled out information and whatever. And they're like, got anything you need to tell us? I was like, what are you talking about? They're like, you ever been arrested? I was like, well, yeah. You didn't ask me that. He's like, what'd you get? I got arrested for getting in a fight in a bar and then getting in a fight outside of the bar and then chasing people down an alley and getting in another fight, which happened to be right in front of the police station. So it really wasn't too hard for them to throw me in jail. And I got out of it because I was like, well, I mean, I won. I won the fight. You know, it's not my fault. They started. I just won. And two of the guys I beat up, like really big local guys, like 6'4", 6'5". And they're like, the judges look at me. I'm like, yeah, well, I'm a Division I college wrestler, man. These idiots have no idea what they're doing. I'm going to take them down and beat them up, which is exactly what happened, and that didn't. So, yeah, I got delayed a little bit. You know, they're like, they had to go through the whole system, make sure it wasn't a felony, it wasn't this and that and the other. And I had to, like, document everything, and then I ended up getting in. I came out here actually to MCRD in San Diego because even though I'm from Ohio, which would have sent me to Parris Island, I enlisted in Indiana, and Indiana they sent to California.
Oh, so that's kind of like the dividing line?
I don't know why, and I was like, and I had the opportunity if I wanted to go to Parris Island or if I wanted to go to San Diego, and I was like, I'm not going to Parris Island. First of all, I don't know where that is. It's in South Carolina, and I was like,
but I do know where San Diego is.
I was like, California seems cool. Like, let's do this. And then came out here, and still, like, I mean, my military career was a complete disaster. It wasn't, but like.
But you said there was a small delay. So were you in boot camp before the end of 2001, or was it into 2002?
No, I 2001, September 11, 2001. I went in. I stood on the Yellow Footprints, 2 miles from here, on October 21st, 2001. So less than a little over a month, I was there. And again, no idea what I'm doing. Standing there.
But at least they painted feet on the ground for me to stand on.
People are yelling at me, and I'm like, I'm as old as they are. I was older. I was 22 years old, and I'm like, pfft. And in my head, I'm still Division I college wrestler. I will whip this guy's ass. This guy yelling at me is 2 foot tall. I'll kill you. And even with the voice, and they're screaming and yelling, and I'm like, okay, man, I've been through the ringer. Like, you want me to run and do pull-ups? I could do this in my sleep. And, I'm like how was recruit training or boot camp? I'm like, it was fun. I had a blast. It was like being at a wrestling camp for 3 months. It was great. I loved it. I would do it. I wish I could go back as an adult and do it again. I would love it. And I was school train was like.
With even more attitude.
Exactly, yeah. 4066 was my MOS, so data systems networker or something. I didn't know anything about computers. I'm like, why this? And like my ASVAB score or whatever it was high enough, and they're like, all right. And I go, well, what do I do? And they're like, well, you're gonna be like a systems administrator. I was like, I don't know what that means, man. So they sent me to comm school at 29 Palms and started looking at computers, and I was like, I do not want to do this. I wanted nothing to do with it. Checked in my first unit.
29 Palms makes you want to go back home to eat in Ohio.
Exactly. And the crazy thing is, I checked in my first unit, and I was like, I mean, I can run fast, shoot straight, pretty good wrestler, and I was older. So as weird as it was, I went in as a Lance Corps or PFC because I had been to college, and I started. There's like sergeant, staff sergeant, whatever. We're the same age, so I just naturally hung out with older people. Right. And, when it got done, I like to work out and whatever. And I'm like, well, I'm stronger than they are. I'm in better shape than they are. And I know if we're going to do any fighting, I know I'm going to win. Right. So I had this advantage in my head that it didn't matter if they were a major or a colonel or a PFC, I'm still tougher than they are. And, and this is just this mentality that I had, as weird as it was, they bought it. It was like, Marines always say, get really good at skating, right? I was an excellent skater. I didn't do anything in the military. I don't know how or why. As weird as it sounds, though, the systems administrator job, the Navy then takes it over from the Marine Corps. And so I essentially lost my MOS. I had no job. And I was like, well, what am I going to do? But it's up to the Marine Corps to figure it out. So I became like a journeyman. They just kept shipping me around like security. I went to a track unit, did this, and I went to martial arts instructor and whatever. And I was like, I feel like I don't even know. And then one of the units I checked into is this guy Ryan Roberts. His dad was a Marine colonel, so he grew up in the military. And when he had also been to college once, but he worked for Microsoft, actual Microsoft as a computer nerd. And so when he checked in the unit, he was like, I think at the time I was a corporal and he was a lance corporal. And I was like, so this is a guy who worked for Microsoft and I'm telling him what to do? Like, no, man, I'm not telling him anything to do. He's going to figure it out well before me. And so, the luck of the draw with the military, it was like, I kept getting people that came in that were really, really good. And all I had to do was maybe motivate them to maybe work out a little bit more or, whatever, be nicer to their wife or whatever it was. And I'm like, okay, this is crazy. Like, I want to stay in the military forever because I'm not doing anything. And then when
you're the first MOS concierge, just take care of the other Marines.
Seriously, like jobs would open up, and I was like, I'll go do that. That sounds awesome. And they're like, what are you doing? I'm like, I'm working with security forces. This, my MOS switched from 4066 to 0659, which is like data chief. I don't know what that even does. I had no idea, and it was just because the transition when 4066 went away.
That was the next closest thing.
And because of my rank at the time, I just became a data chief. I couldn't tell you what the first thing a data chief does, but that was and I'm like, this is insane. And I was like, okay, I'm in the military for a while, active some, reserve some, IRR some, depending on how skinny or fat I was, depending on how much I was actually doing in the military. And then I started working with, I was like, man, one of my buddies went into, became an 0211, so counter intel. And I was like, oh, this is the cool shit. Like, I'm going to be Jason Bourne. I'm going to go be a spy. I would really want to do this. And I looked around and as luck would have it, I found a reserve unit in Hialeah, Florida, that had all 0211s. It was an intelligence translator battalion, but there were 6 of them, 6 people. And I was like, okay, cool. So I reached out to them and said, hey, listen, I'm in the IRR right now, but I would like to start drilling again. Can I come over and just see? Because I have a friend who's an 0211 and what he's doing looks really cool. And they're like, yeah, come on over. And they're like, and I showed up and like, have my camis. I was like, I'm ready. And these guys are in like shorts, t-shirts, flip-flops, beards. And I was like, what is this shit? And they're like, yeah, well, we're in Miami. 1, 2, we're counter intel guys. We don't really wear, uniforms. We don't really go by rank. We don't really do these things. And I was like,
we're supposed to blend.
Yeah. And I was like, I think I have just died and gone to heaven. Like, this is Marine Corps heaven. I don't have to shave. I don't have to wear camis. Nope. I'm like, what are we doing? They're like, we train in Miami Beach. I go, what do you mean train? And they're like, we work on tracking and surveillance and we basically go out and play intel games on Miami Beach. And I was like, this is cool. Like, where do you guys stay? They're like, is there like a barracks or something? I don't know where you stay. They're like, no, we stay in hotels like normal people. And I'm like, what? And then, we go out and they're like, the very first day I was with them, they're like drinking beers at noon, blending in, no haircuts. I didn't have hair, so I had my head shaved, but I was like, there's no haircuts. They're drinking beer on working. And we used to go out and try to get people's ATM pins just to see, through lines of questioning to figure out, within a couple numbers, I think I can get the pin to your ATM. That was like, these are the games that we would play.
Right. And
they would get them. And I'm like, what is happening here? Like, what kind of black magic are you guys doing? And it was awesome. I'm like, this is great. So they're like, cool, here's the problem with this. So when I got out of the military, I was 02 ... I had not been to school because guess what? Marine Corps didn't have school seats. And I was a staff sergeant. So I'm like, okay, I need a school seat. And they're like, yeah, we got a seat for you. 3 weeks later, yeah, sorry, there's a corporal. They took it. So the lower ranks, they took it. And, I was married and 2 kids. So I'm like, I really need like something stable here.
Right.
And I really wanted to go back in, and I was like, I'll go anywhere. I'll do anything. You move me anywhere. Like, I'm heart and soul Marine Corps. For once in my life, I think I figured out what I want to do. I want to go have a beard and wear flip-flops and work in the Marine Corps. Like, I think this is going to be great.
But that was a reserve unit in Florida?
It's a reserve unit, yeah.
But you were going to go back in active duty?
Well, that's what I wanted to do. So I was training with the reserve unit there. And then I wanted to go back in and sign a brand new contract and go active duty. And typical military, dragging their feet, nope, school's gone. And then there was a time, even in that time, I'm like, maybe I'm going to go to OCS but I wanted to go to OCS and be an intel officer, right? Like I had all these parameters in my mind that I wanted to do this, and same thing. It wasn't working. I'm like, this is so stupid. Like I can't do this, and I need to support my family. I need to do, figure out what I want to do with my life. And working with the reserve unit was hard because they would call me and say, hey, we have drill this weekend. Okay. Well, I have sales goals that I need to meet for the advertising company that I'm working for. This is my real job. Even though in my mind I was a Marine, in my mind I was going to be, Jason Bourne. I was like, I still have to pay my bills.
Yeah.
And I kind of just lost it one day. I was like, screw the Marine Corps, screw the military. Like they're not giving me the opportunity to succeed. And I was like, I'm in damn good shape. Like I was a McMap, they call it, but like black belt instructor, like I could run fast, shoot straight. I had all of these things in my mind. I'm like, why wouldn't they want me? I started taking Russian, so I was fluent reading and writing Russian, and I was like, why? I can't understand this. And it was this happened to coincide with a kind of troop drawdown of Iraq and Afghanistan, and they didn't really have a need for me. If I had not had the rank that I had, a staff sergeant, then, I would have been in. But I had the rank, and they're like, well, kick rocks.
Age and rank was going against you.
Age and rank. And that's the other thing is I was older, right? So I'm like, this is not good. So I didn't know what to do, and I was like, okay, well, I got out and just kind of like lost it. I was like, I don't know what to do. I left Florida. I moved to Cincinnati by myself. For 6 months, I spent time up there just like working. I was brokering freight, a business again. My dad told me not to do it. I was, okay, well, I'm doing it. And I loved what I was doing. But what I was doing? When I was brokering freight, like I was running avocados from McAllen, Texas to Bloomington, California, and then outbound everywhere as a third-party logistics sales rep. But all the people that I was working with were all former military. So we operated like a team.
How'd you stumble into that?
I knew I wanted to leave Florida, and I didn't know really where to go. But I grew up in Ohio. So I had applied and kind of got accepted at 3 different positions, one in Minnesota, one in North Carolina, which is oddly that I live there now, and one in Ohio. But I didn't know anybody in the other places. I didn't really want to move to Minnesota because it was too cold. Carolina I really wanted to move to, but I didn't know anybody. And then Cincinnati was 1 hour from where I grew up, and I was like, at least it's, and my mom and dad were an hour away. I was like, this is cool. If I need to go home and get a meal or do laundry or something, I can go do that. So that's how I did that, and I absolutely loved it.
I guess my question is, how did you find that job? Because I'm thinking most people don't sit in, what are we talking, 2004, 5, 6, that range?
This was 2012.
Oh, so you actually did 2 enlistments?
So I went in active, and then, went in active, dropped reserve, then got in the IRR, then went back in the reserve.
Got it.
And then at this time, I just had time on my contract, and I was like, I'm just going to keep going until they tell me not to. And they never told me not to. They just kept letting me come over and play. I was like, this is so fun. I could get time. I could hang out in Miami Beach and screw around, and it was unbelievably fun. We would ride bicycles. We'd have like a clown car, and we'd mix our uniforms. Or I'd have a beard one day and not a beard the next day. It was so fun. Like I was like, this is awesome.
But the being a broker, I mean, how'd you stumble across that?
I had no idea what it was, and a guy named Matt Disher called me, Marine, called me and said, hey, there's a job. I go, what do you guys do? And he said, we broker freight for trucks. As weird as this sounds, when I was growing up, I lived just off of I-70, and there was a trucking company called JB Hunt, and they had cool looking trucks. And I was like, man, I think it would be awesome to be a truck driver. And my mom and dad were like, you're not a truck driver. I didn't even know how that industry worked, but it was a Marine called me and said, I think I posted on something on LinkedIn, like I'm looking for a job. Marine calls me and says, how'd you like to be a freight broker? I'm like, I have no idea what that is.
But yes, I'll do it.
But it sounds cool. And he goes, well, our top reps are making like $600,000 or $700,000 a year.
Brokering freight.
Brokering freight. And I was like, what? So I went in and he goes, well, there's a team here that is run by, he was like an Army staff sergeant or something. He goes, it's almost all military. You'll fit right in. And I went and met the team, and we operated like a teams guy. I mean, it was like, this is awesome. Like we walked in and it was all military, And, we're giving each other shit and like making fun of each other and, like definitely HR nightmare because we're the way we speak and everything that's going on. And I'm like, this is so awesome. Like, this is so much fun. And I did that for 1 year and 1 day. Loved it. Loved the company. Loved everything about it, except for they managed our talk time. And I had like in 1 week over 40 hours live calls on the phone for over 40 hours. I happened to look at my cell phone that had over 40 hours as well. So over 80 hours of talking in 1 week. I'm like, that's too much. I can't handle this. I was also homeless for a little while. I slept in a tent because I moved to Ohio and gas prices, the first time it ever spiked, it was like $4 a gallon. And I was working so much that I was like, I'm not leaving. I'm just going to get a tent and sleep out back. And then the CEO of the company called me in and they had security footage of me pitching a tent. And then I thought I was getting fired. And then he sent out a message to at the time there were like 3,000 employees of the company. This is what it's going to take to be a successful broker. And he was like, why did you start doing this? I said, if for something in the morning, all the leads that haven't been called in 21 days drop off into an open pool, and I would go in and tag them, all of them, because I was there. Also, I was there because I had free internet, cable, a gym, a shower, like snacks, and I didn't want to spend any money. So I kind of was gaming the system, and I was getting all these clients or all these leads, and then I was calling them immediately. And then the other brokers in the company hated me. I mean, absolutely hated me, and I didn't care. And my boss loved me. And then the CEO of the company sent out a company-wide email and said, basically, this is what it's going to take to be successful. And I had moved from Florida to Ohio, and I had no money. I had no money. I bought an $11 pizza at a place called La Rosa's, and I went to pay with my debit card, and it got declined for a pizza. And the girl's like, I'll give it to you. And I was like, no, I'm not taking it. If I can't afford it, I'm not doing it. And so that, that kind of happened. And then I started to think man, I actually could make money. This guy's making $700,000 a year. If I make $70,000 a year, I'm super rich. And I started doing really well, but I'm looking at this, my personal life wasn't great. My health wasn't great. I was just working and working and working.
Well, you're spending every single minute at the office.
Yeah, every minute at the office. And I'm also talking to truck drivers in McAllen, Texas, bitching at them because they decided not to go pick up a load, which then cost me $1,000, out of my pocket. And I'm like, I can't do this. It's brokering, but it's like gambling. And, it's addictive as gambling could be for many people. I don't have an addictive personality, but as addicting as it could be for many people, that's exactly what was happening to me. I became addicted to working, and I loved it, but it was not healthy. Still an admirable profession, but I don't half-ass most things.
Right.
I'm I'm going. Let's go. And I was it was the night before Thanksgiving. I had a truck get stopped at the border in California and something was wrong with their payload, however they did it. It was the night before Thanksgiving, so I had paid for a warehouse to be there overtime. I had to pay for another truck to come off. I had paid for the tow truck driver, and this load cost me $6,000 or $7,000 out of my own pocket, out of what would have been my pool of commissions, which was essentially took me back down to zero. It's again, I'm working my ass off. And because one thing happened that I had no control over, took all that work and washed it away. No money.
So even though you're working for a company, it sounds more like you're an independent contractor in the sense that you were covering the day-to-day expenses of your brokering?
So I had a salary, but the salary went, you could go on, then I went 100% commission. So as soon as I could do that, I went to 100% commission. And then I had to pay back that salary. So the salary was $35,000 a year, which is not a lot for working 80 hours a week. And once you go on commission, then anything in commission, you had to pay back that $35,000. Brilliant from the company because they essentially just floated you a loan.
Right.
But then I did that, and then I started paying this off, and I'm like, okay, I'm gonna start making money. This one night before Thanksgiving that happened, and it soured me because I was like, I've worked my ass off, and now my funds still say zero. This makes no sense to me. I don't want to do this anymore. And so I had put a thing up on April Fool's Day of all things. Like, hey, I'm thinking about moving back to Eaton, Ohio, which I had vowed never to do. I'm never going back to Eaton, Ohio. And a guy that I wrestled with saw that, and he said, are you serious? And I was like, no, I'm not serious. It's April Fool's Day, man. There's no way I'm coming back there. He just so happens calls me and says, hey, he was an elected official, civil engineer. He calls me. He's like, I have a position open. I'd like to talk to you about it. I'm not an engineer at all. I don't even know what civil engineers do. Why do you want to talk to me? He goes, I don't want you to be a civil engineer. I'm a civil engineer because I want you to help me run the office. And I go, what do I have to do? And he goes, I mean, you ran Marines. You took care of Marines. Yeah. That's what I want you to do. These are city workers, county workers. And I want you to help them, make sure that they're here on time. Make sure that they clock out on time. If there's issues with their, insurance or whatever, like I need you to manage this. I also need kind of what we would call a bullet sponge. When the public is complaining, I need somebody to get in between the elected official, which was him, and the public, which was me. So I became the complaint department. You want to complain, you got to come to me. I don't always play nice, and I don't always listen. This guy's like, my family's been in this land for 200 years, and we had, they called tile, but like underground drainage pipes that diverted the water for the crops. We've been on here for 200 years. We never had a problem until you got here. I'm like, listen, you son of a bitch. Why are you yelling at me that your freaking tile's broken on your property? Go fix it. But I mean, it's really weird in rural Ohio. People would break the tiles underground so that their neighbor that they didn't like didn't get the water.
Oh, wow.
Like, it was really crazy. And so we're like, what the hell? I'm like, what the hell am I getting into? But because I grew up in this town, I was local enough. They all knew me, and I was a pretty good athlete. So they all knew who I was. So when they were pissed off coming to me, they weren't coming to argue with the elected official. They were coming in to argue with me, the guy that was a really good football player, really good wrestler. Now it's a different conversation. I went, one of maybe like probably 5 kids that have ever been to a Division I school to be in athletics. I was one of them. So they were coming to argue with me. I'm like, well, I'm not putting up with your shit. Like, we're going to have a conversation, but I'm going to win this one. Even though I didn't know what I was doing, thank God. So I did that for a few years, and then it was
fake it till you make it.
Yeah, honestly. And I'm like, what am I doing here? And what's crazy is I opened a gym and I started teaching little kids wrestling. I worked with the local sheriff's department and started funding kids, like at-risk kids that were, troublemakers, which was me, kind of a troublemaker growing up. I had nothing else to do. And then I would bring them into the gym and we would wrestle and we would beat the shit out of them. I mean, we would beat them senseless. I had really good wrestlers too. I mean, I put like 5-6 kids in Division I, but I had attracted them from other areas of the state to come in and train with me. And it was wild. I mean, I took the bad kids and, they got beat up, but they got better and they needed a positive role model. They needed a father figure. They needed certain things in their life to have. And I was able to provide that in the community that I grew up in, which made a lot of sense to me. The problem with it was I got bored. I got bored with my job because
sounds like a reoccurring theme.
Yeah. I just kept getting bored and over and over and over. And I'm like, I don't want to do this. And this girl that I knew from my hometown called me, and she was working in electronic payments, and she's like, and I'm looking, and she's like, she's got a yacht, and she's on private planes, and all this other stuff. And I was like, what do you do? She's like, I'm a credit card processor. Okay, cool, whatever. I don't know what that means. What do you mean, credit card processor? So I started getting into that, and it's like, and again, like, even starting in the military, from the time that I went in, I'd never really had a position, never really had a job. I just kept getting a weird title, doing a weird job that nobody kind of knew about. But it was been kind of all over the place. The weirdest thing is I keep leaning on a network of military or my wrestler friends, but they're the same person. Like the wrestlers I wrestle with are the same as the Marines I served with or whatever it is. It's exactly the same. Mentality, the way we operate, the way we deal with everything. And I kept leaning on these networks of people, and she was living in Temecula, California. Like, all right, so I was going to open an office in Ohio, and I went out to Temecula, and I was like, this is really pretty out here. I was like, this is great. Okay, cool. Now what do? And I started working in Temecula. She was like, I need you to move to Temecula. And I was like, okay, well, like anything, I don't know what I'm going to do in Temecula, so what am I going to do for fun? I'm driving down the road, and I see Dan Henderson's Athletic Fitness Center. I'm like, that's Hendo. That's Dan. I'm going to go in and see. Yeah, we'll go in, and there, Sam Alvey's in there, Dan Henderson's in there, like these fighters, and I was like, okay, so I went in and wrestled. I was a pretty good wrestler, and I'm Sam Alvey. I mean, he's not in the UFC anymore because he couldn't win a fight like last 10 times, but he has like 20 fights in the UFC now. And I wrestled with Sam, and I just schooled him. Thank God. I mean, I set the deck straight. No punching,
yeah.
No kicking.
All we're doing is wrestling.
Yeah, no punching, no kicking, no choking. We're just wrestling. Cool. I'm gonna be okay. And did that, and I started to meet people and good friends, and that kind of was just like, it was like my escape was like, whether it be military, whether it be wrestling, I found something that I knew I was good at doing, and then that kind of opened doors for me to go like, all right, well, I know I can wrestle. I'm going to go here. And then Sam knew this guy, and then knew this guy, and this guy, and it just kind of built this network of just cool people.
What is the business of electronic payments or e-pay?
So that's credit card processing, and I don't do it anymore. But it would be every transaction you put your credit card out there, the company that allows the business to accept payment is that. So, and they get a fractional percentage on every transaction. So I did that for a while, and I realized.
So the terminals at a business are run by a private company, not the banks?
So you have card issuers, which is if you have a Chase Visa, Chase is a card issuer. Then you have a bank who holds that merchant account. The terminal may be another company altogether, but the processor has an agreement to be able to put this terminal here. And it ultimately does go back to a bank, depending on what bank issued the ability for that merchant to accept payment. And then it's usually a third-party sales organization that goes out and sell it. The banks kind of want a distance. They don't want to be too close. So they have, businesses that start up and go out and sell these electronic transactions. Super, super, super competitive business. And as crazy as it sounds, you have to have like a third grade education and you can do it. You don't need to go to high school. You don't need to go to college. You don't need to do anything. If you can speak and get in front of somebody who is accepting payment, you can sell these things.
Is it, to a basic degree, you're basically selling a product to a given business. Hey, use our service.
Exactly. Yeah. There could be a product base. So we were selling exact service. Like the same thing goes with e-commerce. Like if I want to put my credit card in and buy something online, that transaction still has to happen. So you need a gateway, essentially what that terminal would be, a virtual terminal online to be able to do it. So we were doing that, and I realized like there's a lot of people out there in that side of this e-com world that are making few $1 million a year. I was not making a few $1 million a year. I'm like, what is this? So I started looking at it, and I'm like, all right, how do I learn this? I'm getting paid one time. On an offer online, there's like 10 to 12 things that need to happen. You need a manufacturer, you need fulfillment, you need internet traffic, you need a page builder, somebody to actually build your web page. You need product, you need shipping, you need fraud mitigation, you need your payment side, you need to manage your customer flow. Like there's a lot of things that are happening. I'm like, I'm getting paid once, and I could be getting paid 10 to 12 times. I'm going to go learn how to do that. I think I was going to go learn how to do that. Reached out to a guy who happened to be in the Army, and he had an opening. So he owns a company. His vice president of sales was in the Navy, and he was like, well, I could use a Marine, and we ran that as military, exactly the same. And he taught me how. This is what these people do. This is how they make money. This is how they make money. This is how they make money. And I'm like, awesome. Very militaristic, very structured, very rigid, but it worked. And I went back to leaning on a network of people who I could trust and understand, which veterans, and it made sense to me.
But this company became more of a one-stop shop. So if you're a business entity, we'll do everything for you. We'll design your website and we'll process your payments. And everything in between.
They were actually just a CRM, so they just managed customer flow, but they had an online platform that you could kind of do everything specifically for e-commerce. What you just described is essentially what I do now.
Oh, okay.
I have sophomoric knowledge of all of it. I'm good at none of it. Again, just like my military career or my very, very, very average college wrestling career, I'm good at none of it, but I know a little bit about all of it. And then I just start connecting people, right? So I have somebody that wants to run, they want to run diet pills or gummies or something. Cool. And I ask them a bunch of questions. Who's making your product? How are you shipping it? How are you receiving it if customer doesn't like it? Excuse me. These things, this, that, and the other. Who's doing your page builds? Who's doing this? So this time I went out and got agreements with, I found a page builder. I found an affiliate traffic network. I found a chargeback mitigation company. I found a payments company. I found this company, this company, this company. They talked me through their process. And I'm like, all right, so I see there's like 3 or 4 things that you're probably missing. I know the people that do that, and I'll connect you. And then I give warm introductions and say, hey, so-and-so, you're a fulfillment company. These people need their product fulfilled. They're doing it from home, and they're not doing a very good job. The fulfillment company's like, thank you very much. You guys connect. And then I usually will charge the person, not a retainer, but like a nominal fee for the introductions and the setup. And then I get a residual payment from the people that I have agreements with, like the fulfillment company would give me a fractional percentage of each thing that's sold. And so I started doing that.
So you're essentially back to being a broker again.
I'm brokering services that I don't do. As weird as it sounds, but it's not that hard. I don't have to be good at any of it.
Right.
I have to know it. I have to know the people. And that led me down this path of, okay, I'm on this like rant right now about no Google Hangouts, no Zoom calls, get in front of people and understand who they are and get to know who they are. And I love it. And that's the travel. This is where the travel comes in. This is why I'm doing these things. It's like, I wanted free travel September 12th, 2001, because I think his first name is William. I don't know if he goes by Bill or William, but Staff Sergeant was his first name to me, right? Staff Sergeant Van Hoy said, you're going to travel all over the world, whatever you want to do. And I still want that damn free travel. So now I'm doing by way of business, traveling all over the world, introducing people. But I think it's much more powerful to be in front of somebody, having a conversation that is in a Zoom call. Like, to stand in front of somebody and go, okay, I'm asking you a question, easy question, hard question, whatever question. I'm going to stand here and talk to you about it and figure out a way to work together. And then, so that's why I travel around and doing that. And exactly as you just said, I'm brokering. I'm brokering ideas, and somebody's like, man, I have an idea about this or that. I'm like, oh man, that's awesome. Actually, I just spoke to somebody 3 weeks ago who you should have a conversation with. Let me do an introduction for you guys. You talk. Sometimes I ask for payment. Many times I do not, because it's not realized at all. And then if they blow up and they make a bunch of money, I'm like, remember when I introduced you guys? And most people are pretty good about that. But it's super fun. Super fun. But as weird as this sounds, all of these things go back to relationships that I formed under adverse situations, whether it be college wrestling or whether it be the military. Like, the way that I interact with people is very similar. Like, I need to know that you've done something hard in your life. Just because you have a Lambo doesn't mean that you're successful. I think you're stupid for buying a Lambo. Like, you look like an idiot. If that's your thing, that's your thing. But I'm like, a Lambo's going to get you from point A to point B, no different than a Prius. It's going to do the same thing. But I have these conversations with people, but I'd like to do it in person. And I'd like to get a feel for them. Maybe this is going back into being a Marine and working at an intel unit for a while. Like, I want to dig on them. I want to find out what works and what doesn't, because each time I meet a new prospective client or customer, I learn something. And then being able to apply that, and, a super, super, super efficient time management is help. That's from the military, that's what it is. And it makes me happy. Like, I love doing it. I love meeting people. I love getting in front of them. I love talking to them. And then secondarily, it's like, I also know that I'm providing a service and helping people out. There's a lot of people out there that are like, I have this great idea. I go, what are you going to do? They're like, I'm going to build a web page. Cool. How do you get people to your web page? I don't know. Beautiful web page. Nobody's looking at it. It's like it's like if the Mona Lisa was painted and nobody saw it. It's probably a great painting. Nobody's looking at it. So you don't have a web page problem. You have a traffic problem. Or, you have a great web page and a shitty product. You don't have a web page problem. You have a product problem. Or your shipping is terrible. You have a fulfillment problem.
Yeah. Your customers aren't getting their product.
Exactly. And if they are getting it, they don't like it. All right. Well, then that's a product problem. Like, however you want to break it down. And it's really that ability to break down simple process and procedure. And this goes back into, as crazy as this sounds, You have, 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 3, 2, you're done over at MCRD San Diego when they're yelling at me at boot camp to put my socks on and then take them off and then put them on and take them off and put them on and take them off. I'm like, why in the hell are we doing this? But I think through this now in business, and I'm like, I get to the point where I'll probably annoy people. I talk to them and I ask them the same question 15 times and I want the same answer 15 times. If I get the same answer 14 times and one of them is different, now we have a problem. Now
why did the answer change?
Exactly. Why did that answer change? And then is there something that I'm missing or that I can pick up on that maybe, like when an artist is painting, he steps back and then he looks at it, or she steps back, looks at it. I missed this part. Okay, back in. Same thing within business and process, but truth be told, I didn't learn this definitely not from wrestling, from the military. It's from being told to put my socks on and off 15 freaking times in 1 minute or whatever it is. And then that just continued on, like whether I was, security forces or whether I was in Intel battalion or whether I was with the trackers, why do we have to do another stupid gear check, another inventory? Why? Well, we've done it 10 times. Is the number the same 10 times? Yeah. You know why? Because on the 11th time, it probably won't be. And I'm like, son, you got to be kidding me. And everyone loses their mind and like, it is what it is, but it trained me to think this way now when I'm speaking to people in business, and I'm like, something's not right. Something's not adding up. And if it's not adding up, then I want to know why. There's that whole thing. The other cool thing is like, I get to go around the world and I'm still a United States Marine. I still hold that title near and dear, right? I'm super pumped about it. I meet cool people and maybe they have military background, whether they're anywhere in the world. My friend Paulo, he was in Brazilian military, and I met him at Lollapalooza of all places, and he traveled around the world with DJs. I was like, what do you do? And he's like, I'm personal security for the DJs. I was like, well, this is cool. He's like, yeah, we're going to go to another show. I'm just friends with them. We would talk about military and whatever. And then here I am on stage at Lollapalooza, like literally on stage. I don't have any music talent. What am I doing on stage at Lollapalooza? My buddy, who was in the military in Brazil, hooked me up, and this is a thing. This brotherhood is all over the world, no matter where he served. Same with Israel. I was just in Tel Aviv. Well, in Israel, you have to serve in the military. And so any single person I sat and talked to, it's an easy icebreaker. Like, what'd you do in the military? I know you're Israeli. I know you served.
Right.
What'd you do? They tell me like, oh, I did this and this and this. I'm like, that's so cool. And they're like, it's what we do in Israel. And then some reason or another comes up. And I don't lead with I was in the military, but you can tell the line of questioning that I know enough about it. And they're like, well, what did you do? And I was like, again, very average military career. So there is hope for people that are in the military that weren't very good. I was just a good talker, I guess, to be able to do this. But it's a connection that you can have anywhere in the world if you served and it's like, I'm looking for a job or career or whatever, transition or whatever you want to do. Like, okay, cool. What'd you do in the military? They're probably going to tell you the job that they did. That's not how I approach it. I'm like, what'd you do in the military? And I did da-da-da-da. I'm like, I'm not asking your job. What'd you do? Like, well, I was a radio wireman. Again, that's a title. What did you do? Because I know what my title was, and I didn't do a damn bit of that. What'd you actually do? And they're like, oh, I was, what are your hobbies? What are this? Like, there's more to a job than a title, and then you have to get to that answer. Like, what did you actually do as a radio operator? Like, I worked on a Prick 119, da-da-da-da-da. Yeah, but that was only when you were using a radio. What about the other 160 hours a week that you weren't? What else did you do? Jiu-jitsu or something. Like, what did you get into?
Right.
And then how does that apply to whatever? And then the skill set that you learned, how does this apply to whatever company or whatever line of work you want to get into now? Like, not the title, not where your job was, but what are the systems or processes that you've learned in the military that you can apply to this? Whether it be time management or whether the ability to speak or the ability to write or the ability to operate for hours on end with no sleep or, we don't have any food. I don't need to eat. I'll figure it out. It's just weird things. It's like that really, I think people overlook or kind of don't really ever think about their time in the military. Like, listen, I'd never tied a tie before I went to boot camp. Never. I had no idea how to do it. Freaking Marines taught me how to tie a tie in about 30 seconds or else. You know what I mean? Like, it's so crazy, but okay. And you can apply these things throughout your life, your business, relationships, whatever it may be. And it's, it's asking questions. It's like, you're told what to do when you're in the military, up to a point that you begin to tell people what to do over and over and over. And so it's like with rank, you have responsibility, but you do way less, and I'm like, this is kind of screwy, but I kind of would rather than in the civilian world build a little bit of rank so I could do way less. Instead of being tied to one job or one company, I want to be tied to 100 jobs and 100 companies and know that how can I figure out a way to help them grow their business or make their life a little bit easier or whatever it may be, and just applying the same fundamentals I learned at comm school or, MCRT San Diego or whatever it may be, or how to hang out with a gunnery sergeant who did nothing, but he was still the gunny and you still respected him. Even that dude just went outside and smoked packs of cigarettes all day and drank coffee. He's still a gunny. I still, how did you...
But like you just said, he got to a rank where he didn't have to do anything.
He didn't have to do anything.
He spent his time being the one being told to do things.
Exactly. You don't start... Most people don't start as CEO, ever. They started somewhere.
They want to. There are a lot of people, especially today, that think that they can walk in.
Yeah, well, I'm the CEO, whatever. I don't care. That means nothing to me. Unless you're the CEO and you're making a bunch of money and it's super profitable, and that happens. But, the CEO many times is CEO. They're the chief marketing officer, they're the sales officer, they're the HR department, they're whatever, because it's them figuring it out. But, yeah, you want to get to the point where you're not doing all the work. Where you're the gunny, you don't have to do anything anymore. Well, guess what? You put your time in. You know what I mean? And I think people forget about that. And honestly, there's another thing that drives people crazy. At least drives me crazy about the military. I went from a time being told what to do the whole time. And then I got a little bit of rank and then I was able to tell people what to do. But then to be able to go into the civilian world and have somebody go that I know that I've worked harder than. I know that I've outworked them. In my life, I've worked way harder than them. And they're like, you need to go do this. That's a hard thing for a Marine to hear from somebody who's not done anything hard in their life, or a soldier or sailor or airman, whatever. Hey, you need to go sweep the floor. I mean, you need to watch what you're saying. You need to not tell me what to do. Not like that. There's a way to approach it. And I think it's probably really hard. It was really hard for me, to go sit down and be told what to do. It was really hard for me when I left athletics, and it was really hard for me to do it when I left the military, because I didn't like being told what to do. You need to do this. I'm like, oh.
But from the flip side, I've also talked to people, and one of their pieces of advice is, if you're coming out of the military, you need to also understand that you need to take a little bit of that bearing and put it on the back burner, because a lot of people you're dealing with, they're not going to like that, whether it be being told what to do, but there's just a bearing that comes with having been in the military.
Exactly. And it comes across as brash or argumentative or combative. You're correct. Swallow some pride, man. And then the second thing, you have to think that these people are just trying to do their job.
Right.
They're just because they don't have the training that you had, they're just trying to do their job. You don't know what's going on at home. You don't know what's going on here, there, whatever. They're telling you what to do because somebody told them what to do one time. You know what I mean? It's the same. It's cyclical. It's the same thing. And I'm thinking, if you're working at McDonald's and you're the general manager, the manager, something, you're like, you need to go flip the burgers or something like that. Okay, well, I don't really want to be told what to do, but they did it too.
Right.
They didn't start as a manager. They started doing the same thing you're doing. And this process will repeat itself over and over and over. I think that the military has a distinct advantage, because I don't know how many times, in my military career, I was told to do something by somebody that I knew I was way tougher than, I was way smarter than, I was faster, could shoot straighter, all this stuff. And I still had to listen to him because he had a stripe that was more than mine. And I'm like, this guy is a clown, and I'm still going to do it. Right. So, roger that. I'll go do what I'm doing. I hated it. I was miserable. But that transitions to the civilian world as well. Like, somebody's going to tell you what to do. Just go to it.
Well, and you hit on a great point previously where you've worked with some teams in the civilian side, but that were either largely or all former military.
Yeah.
And when you get into that like-minded mentality of, hey, here's our task, here's our mission, boom, everybody's focused on it and they're just moving forward.
It's super simple. And I mean, I really would suggest, like, look for these veteran-friendly organizations or businesses, because there's going to be veterans there and you're going to immediately have friends. Listen, I'm a Marine. That guy's in the Navy. This guy's in the Army. This is Air Force. We're definitely going to make fun of each other's service. But if things get really hard, I know I'm going to lean on them for sure. Like, immediately, no questions asked. And so you start looking at this and it's like, even if you're in a new organization, like, start asking about, are there, depending on the size of the organization, do you have anything with veterans locally? Like, within the organization, like, there should be, maybe once a month the veterans organization go out and grab a beer. Cool. Those things help. Many organizations don't have them, and you can start them. It takes 2 seconds to call the HR, like, hey, do we have any former veterans here? Or an email in a Slack channel, or any of you not former veterans, or any veterans. I am too. I'd love to talk about it. It would be cool if we maybe once a month we went out and grabbed a beer, went and played paintball, or I don't know, went to the gym together or something. I don't know. But it gets you around like-minded people. It's sometimes cross-department and sometimes outside of rank, meaning, like, I could have been the last person hired, but the CEO may have been, an Army captain or something. We have the same kind of, like, experience within the military in some capacity. So even though the CEO is here and I'm the last person hired, in my mind as the employee, I just jumped ahead of, like, so many people. Right. Because I have this relationship, and even if it's casual poking or banter, that I can do because I have status of a veteran, that guy does as well.
Right.
That all of these people between us, not all of them have it. And I just put myself in a little better position. And it's not like being a kiss ass either. It's like, oh, listen, we need this. Veterans need other veterans. Like, we did really bad things or really good things. And you need people to talk about it. You need these interactions with people who understand what you have done, what they have done. It could be leaning on them in times of need, or, saying happy birthday, Marines, when it's a Marine Corps birthday, or whatever it may be.
But like you previously said, it is a valuable network, and
unbelievably,
to not utilize it, you're failing yourself. But also, what I think the key thing that I took from what you said previously is, don't make that your only calling card. I was in the military. It's like, go beyond that. Make that the icebreaker. Make that to be the commonality you can talk to somebody with. But once you talk about what you did and you limit it to just, I was a radioman, I'm just using that,
right,
then that ends the conversation. It's got to be what you start with, but then grow yourself from that.
Of course, yeah. I mean, and honestly, like, I this is great. Like, here's my title. Here's my MOS. Cool. I don't really care, right? What you learn, what you get into, whatever. And then really, the one thing I've done this always is, like, I need to know other veterans. I want to know, even if it's not in the company, if it's my industry, I want to know other veterans. I'm out here in San Diego for a trade show. Well, I want to know who the other veterans are at this trade show. Maybe I don't work with them, but I know I can open, as you said, icebreaker. I know I can open a door with that. I know I can talk to them about it, like, oh, you're in the Royal Canadian Mounted Police, or you were blah-da-da-da. Sweet, man. It's not exactly the same, but it's like, kind of get it, right? We can have a cool conversation and tell sea stories. Amazing. That many times leads into business. Or, like, I have a really good friend, who served da-da-da-da. He's doing this, and this business. You should introduce him, or you should meet. Like, to introduce me right now. Like, let's go. I mean, I lean on that all the time, whether it be warm or even soft introductions from either veterans that I've met or veterans that they know, right? And it's like, hey, have you ever met so-and-so? I'm like, no, who is it? It's a CEO of whatever company. I'm like, cool, what do they do? It's like, I don't know exactly what they do, but he was in the Navy. Oh, that's cool. I might reach out to him, like, so-and-so told me about you, said we should probably meet. And, oh, by the way, I heard you're in the Navy. I was a Marine. I'd love to meet you and grab some time. That's like an immediate icebreaker because we have a bond, and they're going to not take that call. They're going to take it, right? And it's like, especially if it's the same service. If it's like a Marine calling a Marine, like, I'm going to answer the phone.
Right.
Like, it just really helps. And it doesn't have to be your organization. It can be any organization that you want to get in front of. Like, research them, find out, go on LinkedIn. I want to find out a company we'll use. Home Depot. No, not too big. I need the company. There's maybe there's 100 people there. I'm going to go through those 100 people and look on the employees on that company, scroll all the way down and look through every single one of them, or maybe do a semicolon military, semicolon veterans, semicolon whatever. And I see 3 people at this company who are veterans. I'm reaching out to them first. I'm going to grab them and talk to them and say, hey, by the way, I was looking at the company, so-and-so, and I saw that you were in the military. I appreciate your, thanks for your service, man. I served from this time to this time. Cool. That opens doors. I won't do it on LinkedIn messaging because I think it sucks because it's just sales after sales after sales. But I can find their company email. I can fire off an email. You get the email script of how their email's at what XYZ company.
Right.
I'm going to find out how their email form looks. Just send them an email to their company email. Like, or, if you're in the military, like I used to have Eagle Globe and Anchor on my signature. Like, what, with that one out, they see this. Okay, well, this guy's a Marine.
Right.
That's cool. That helps. Use it to your advantage. You put your damn time in. You got yelled at and ate shitty food for years. Go ahead. You earned it. Put that in there and use it. Use it to your advantage. I think it's powerful. I think it opens doors that most people, the veterans kind of get it, but I don't think they definitely use it to the capacity that they could in any organization.
Yeah, that's the double-edged sword. Is either there's some that don't utilize it to the effectiveness. I'll use the example I've heard. If you want to be a lawyer, go to Harvard Law School.
Yeah.
Not because necessarily the education you're going to get as a lawyer is going to be that much better. It's that network of former Harvard graduates that you can now reach out to.
Exactly. I had a guy, I actually hired him as an intern, this was like 10 years ago, but his email is whatever, ... harvard.edu. I'm like, that's a Harvard email. I called him immediately. And I said, how many resumes did you send out? And he's like, about 100. I said, how many people have called you back? And he said, about 80. Out of 100 resumes, 80 called you back. It's because your email says harvard.edu. And he was like, I know. And he said, and we can keep that. So now it's Harvard alumni or dot whatever. And I'm like, dude, that's awesome. Same thing in the military, like you can use these. Listen, I don't care. And I'm not going to knock any job or any service as a veteran. I will say some are sexier than others, right? Having said that, one doesn't operate without the other. You know what I mean? Like, listen, if I didn't have cooks in the military or in the Marine Corps, I didn't eat. I'm not eating MREs, but you know what I'm saying? Like, I wouldn't eat. So don't ever make fun of somebody who's like, oh, I was a cook. Like, yeah, well, you ate, didn't you? You know what I mean? Like, whatever it may be. Or supply, like, did you have gear? Yeah. Then shut your face. Or whatever it is. So it's not, you're not knocking on their jobs. It's like, okay, this is cool, but I think that network of people and utilizing it is massive, massive, massive opportunity. Like you said, you don't have to be so brash and so abrasive and like, I was a Marine, hoorah, happy birthday, Marines, Semper Fidelis. I don't lead with that, like, because you look stupid. Like, calm it down a little bit.
Something I would like to add, though, to that is if you were in the non-sexy position.
Yeah.
I've interacted with people who, well, I was just don't sell yourself short. Even if you were just a cook. A lot of people got fed who needed to do a mission because of me.
Exactly.
Take that ownership of even what you might perceive as, I was just and use it to your advantage.
Yeah. I mean, why did you become a cook in the military? Because I could control it. What do you mean? Hey, I ate well. You know what I mean? Honestly. And you know what? If I didn't like somebody, they didn't get what they wanted. I had a lot of power being a cook. Really? Yeah. People don't understand that.
Right.
But they do. Like supply. I have a lot of power being supply. I also have all the newest stuff. I get stuff first. Yeah. Like, I know that this sleeping system came back and it's disgusting. I'm giving it to the guy I don't like. Just because I can. It's a powerful position, no matter what your job was. And it's fun, it's like, but I don't think everybody uses the veterans organization, not organizations, but veteran mentality of I've served, I've understand process, I get through this, like, this is how I got through my time, this is how I got through my day, this is how I did this, and then how can I use it to my advantage now, right? Like, does it open doors? Absolutely. If you use it correctly, and if you don't, call somebody else who's doing it. Like, hey man, you're in the Air Force, how do you ever use that? Like, does that ever open any doors? Yeah, I do this, and this. I'm like, that's super cool. I can maybe put this into my business. That might work. I don't know. But it's fun, like, and you can lean on people, and if you can't, you can at least make fun of them, especially if they're in a different service, or if they're in they're in the Marine Corps with me. I'm like, what'd you do? And they're like, I was in 0311. I'm like, grunt, idiot, get out of here. Can you spell? Can you tie your shoes? Whatever, or you must have been an ASVAB waiver. That I get it, I understand. Like, you can make fun of everybody, but in good fun, and people like that, right? And I think it's super cool to do, and I think there's a lot of people in the military that get out and they're expecting to go be a radio operator. Well, they don't really want to be a radio operator. If they did, they would stay in the military. And they get out and they're like, I don't know what to do. Okay, cool. They want money. They usually want money, or they need money. Okay, cool. Where do I go? How do I begin? And they're like, I don't know how it is now. Like, if the military is helping you with career transition into the civilian world, especially specific to your MOS. But I know when I left college, they didn't help me. And I know when I left the military, the Marine Corps, they didn't help me. They said, we'll see you. Go figure it out.
For a lot of guests that I've had to this point, there's the TAPS program.
Yeah.
And the commonality that I heard is, by the time I got to there, all I wanted to do was be out. And I wasn't thinking long term.
Yeah.
I was thinking short term. All right, I got to sit in this class for a day, 2 days, whatever. Check the box, and all of them have said, I wish I would have paid a little bit more attention. But unfortunately, for a lot of them, they've checked that date on their calendar, and that's when I'm getting out of the military. Yeah. And I just want to get out of here.
Yeah, they drop their pack, man. They're done. I don't give a shit. Like, I'm out. See ya. See that? That's when I'm leaving. What are you gonna do? I don't know yet. And it may take time. It may take 2 weeks, 2 years, 2 decades. I don't know. It may take time until they're like, I miss my time in the military. I miss that structure. I miss probably getting yelled at. I definitely miss yelling at people. I miss that like crazy. That's why I started a kids wrestling club, so I could go yell at kids. I'm like, what are you doing? But I started doing this, and I was like, man, it took a while for me to figure out, like, how do I transition? How do I fall into something? The easiest thing to do was to go look for other Marines. For me, was to go find other Marines, right? So my first job out of the military was as a freight broker hired by a Marine. You know what I mean? Like, that helped. That helped a lot, actually. And so because I was able to lean on him, I was like, I felt like I had a friend immediately, at the company. And then he put me with a group of other military. So I thought I had a group of friends at that point. I got invited to go get beers on my first day at work. Like, that's cool. A lot of places you don't get ever invited to go, or whatever it may be. But it takes a little, like, thinking and processing internally, or hearing people tell you, like, that this is an opportunity you should do. Lean on veterans organizations, veterans networks. And if you don't have one in your company, start one. If it's a company if it's like 5 people, you'll know. But if it's a company of like 30, 40, 50 people, there's probably some veterans in there. Or maybe their dad was a veteran, or you don't know their story, but maybe they're just passionate about veteran. Maybe their son or daughter is serving or something like this. Like, it's a cool thing. Like, military-minded people, whether they served or whether adjacent, will lean on each other and help each other out more times than not. I mean, nobody's going to be a complete dick to you and say, no, you're not welcome. Right. Oh, you're in the Marine Corps? Yeah, only Navy here, man. Get out of here. You know what I'm saying? So you can lean on that, and then... And I guess maybe don't be brash, but don't be bashful of it either. Like, I celebrate like crazy on 10 November. Why? I'm a Marine. That's what we do. We celebrate Marine Corps birthday. Veterans Day is big for me. Memorial Day is big for me. Like, I think of these days and I love it. And, it's kind of one of these things. I'm like, find other people in the company or in your line of work who have similar lines of thought, and it will help you grow your business. It, absolutely. Leaps and bounds compared to not doing it at all. And it's fun. Plus you get friends out.
Speaking of growing your business, be a good employee and talk about your daughter's sunglasses venture.
Hangover shades, right? Yeah, this starts.
I think it's cool that you went into it with your daughter. Or actually, is it her? It's more her,
it's
right?
It's more her. Yeah, she's super, super smart. 17-year-old girl. She has 2 businesses, right? And I'm like, March 18th, 2022. I'm sitting at my house and I'm a bit hungover because it's the day after St. Patrick's Day. And I'm looking in the windows are open, and I'm like, we need shades. Like we need, like this. I don't want this sun. We need shades. And I had like a pair of like trade show sunglasses, and she like whipped them over at me. She was here. She thought I was talking about sunglasses, and I was talking about actually
window shades.
It's like 5-10 minutes later, and I'm sitting there, and I'm like, what? I'm hungover. I'm gonna see if hangover shades is a thing. And I said, and I looked up the URL. It was $1, like $20 a year. This might be cool. And I go, hey, Lil, like Lily's her name. I go, Lil, what do you think about hangover shades? She's like, what's that? And then I said, like, what if it's like glasses? Like you gave me these, as she thought, and I was like, and you would wear them for hangovers. Okay, cool. I didn't really think anything of it, but I bought the website, and then I bought a lot of websites, and I just let them sit there because I get an idea. Usually I'm like 3 beers in, I'm like, man, this is a great idea. I do it, and then it was whatever. And
there's some people that made some serious money when the internet first started and went out and scooped up URLs.
Exactly. I mean, I know, I'll segue or little break, but I know the guy that owns puravita.com. So Pura Vida bracelets, that's not theirs. It's my buddy Tim that lives in Costa Rica. Pura Vida is what they say in Costa Rica. He just bought it like a long time ago. Pura Vida bracelets is here in La Jolla. Came out. They wanted that URL, and he's like, yeah, it's going to be a few $1 million, homie. And he said, you should see how many people land on my page looking for bracelets. And he was like, wow. And he's like, and the entire country of Costa Rica wants that.
Yeah, you hear it once or twice when you're in Costa Rica.
Exactly. And then when .cr, .Costa Rica, instead of .com or became the ending of a URL, he went and bought every word he could find .cr, experience.cr, palmtrees.cr, beach.cr, puravita.cr, bought all of them. And so he basically like hamstring the entire country, the government of Costa Rica, and the tourism department. So anyway, back to my daughter. She goes to school, comes back, and she goes, what if we did sunglasses, but we named them drinks? Like the name of drinks. Like these are red lens glasses, which I love. She calls them Bloody Marys. If you have, yellow lenses, those are called beer goggles. You have this and then so she's sitting in high school sending me drink recipes and names of drinks I've never even heard of, unicorn kisses or this, that. I'm like, what? Like, what are you looking up? And she's like, no, we could do the sunglasses. And she's like, but how would we get them? And then she went out and sourced them. And I'm like, I understand the process. I've been in e-commerce a long time. I was like, we need to source them. You figure out what your costs are. How does this work? What your price points are, how you want to sell them, who do you want to sell them to, how you want to market it, how do you want to do whatever. She basically came up with a business plan. She hired my other daughter as an affiliate and wrote this extensive contract. Like, if you post this many times and you get this many views, you get this percentage of what. I mean, it's very detailed. And I'm just giggling because I'm like, listen, I'm wearing sunglasses anyways. This is cool. And we have thousands of sunglasses at our house now. And then this has kind of evolved into not only the sunglasses, but it's like, okay, well, what else? Like hangover shades is a cool concept. It's funny names. And I get it, here's red, here's blue, here's whatever. And then she's like, well, what else? What other things could we sell? That she said they're light, so they're easy to ship. They're relatively inexpensive to buy in bulk, and the margin is good, similar margin. And so it's like we've looked at like bucket hats and fans and bracelets and whatever it may be. And she's just entrepreneurial in mindset and thinking that way. And as weird as it sounds, like I think now with the hangover shade, she's kind of bored. She's like, I did it. Now I want to go do something else. But she's like, let's do like a military, like tactical shades. Okay, cool. Or shooting shades. She has another one, this is kind of like me and her coming up, but Bang Me Shades. It's shades for ugly people. like, because she thinks the creative will be funny. You know, it's like a really ugly person puts sunglasses on and all of a sudden people come in, you know, and it's like this stuff. But it's just like me and my daughter, we get to hang out and talk about this stuff. And then she's getting some, I have structure for e-commerce anyways. I'm like, okay, well, you need this, you know. I mean, I obviously had to fund it. Right. But yeah, then she started and just goes with it. And it's like, I'm like, okay, whether it's sunglasses or anything else, she understands the process now. You know, we limped through it and figured it out. It was like so fun. And then we talk about it and I'm like, still I get like messages from her like, hey, you know, we're missing, the inventory count's not right. Or, you know, this shipment didn't arrive or what. I'm like, she's in my Shopify store running the whole thing. And I'm like, whatever, you know, like creative team. And, you know, she's relatively creative. She gets in Canva and builds stuff. And what about this? And I'm like, you spelled that wrong. You know, like we look at each other, I'll do something. She's like, that's so stupid. But yeah, it's a blast. That's cool. And it honestly gives us a reason to be together, right? To work together, to have conversations about business and structure and life and what's funny, what's she like, what colors, this, that, what sizes, whatever. That was the one thing she actually wanted to do apparel, but apparel's hard because you have small, medium, large, extra large. One extra large is different than a different extra large. And then you have, inventory. It's like, if you have 200 sweatshirts, that takes up a lot of space. 200 sunglasses takes up like this much space. Right. You know what I mean? So it was just kind of cool, like limited space, easy to ship. One size fits all for the most part, and it works, and it's super fun. And you're teaching her about what you do in a fun way that draws her in, as opposed to, hey, you're going to sit down here and learn this. Yeah, exactly. I mean, she does that. She does the glasses. She's a dog walker, which is kind of crazy because you have to be 18 years old to be a dog walker through some of the apps. So she, of course, lied and walks dogs, but she's like, I have this dog, like all this structured out. I have high school. She was a level 9, going to be a level 10 gymnast. So really good gymnast. Her knees were hurting. And then she got into CrossFit. So she's like, I have CrossFit. I have this. I have 8 dogs to walk and I have to look at the sales. And oh, by the way, I'm in high school. And I was like, I can't tie my shoes. I couldn't tie my shoes. I still don't tie my shoes. But the point is, like, I couldn't do any of this stuff when I was in high school. Wow. Like crazy. And the access to information of the internet is right there. If she needs something, she goes to YouTube and watches it and knows how to do it. You know, I'm like, this is crazy. I didn't have any of this stuff. But, you know, like the opportunities for anybody to do this are there. Right. You just have to apply yourself. And not necessarily apply yourself, but you also have to know, maybe have somebody to lean on who's done it and failed. Right. And it's okay to fail. Like everybody fails. Yeah. What's the saying? Who set out their first time and succeeded? No one ever. You know, it's impossible. Yeah, first time I ever shot a gun, a weapon, was in recruit training. Like, and I think the first time I ever squeezed the trigger was like, where'd that one go? No impact, no idea. That was, I'm like, oh my gosh, this is gonna be really hard. And I'm thinking to myself, I'm a good athlete. Like, I'm smart. If I can't shoot, I'm not gonna graduate boot camp. I'm just going to be not graduate. Every Marine's a rifleman. But I'm thinking to myself, I'm just like, this is going to be the thing that gets me, that I'm like, I can't, like, that guy literally can't walk and talk, but he can shoot straight. So he's like an exemplary Marine recruit. And I'm over here like, come on, man. Like, what is happening here? And I never met height and weight standards. So I was a diet recruit the whole time. Even on like family day, one of my drill instructors came up and took the sandwich off my plate with my family, took it off, threw it away. And I was like, what? And I'm like lobbying. I'm thinking about like, okay, like the Marine Corps, you could, you know, height and weight standards by the form. Right. I never fit. But I'm like, it says here they measure your wrist and your neck and your waist, and some sum of this adds up to your within height and weight standards. And I was like, essentially requesting mass every single day so I could eat more food, and they never listened to me ever. I graduated. I was still, even like the morning of graduation, I still had to say diet recruit and freaking, you know, like, I'm like, can I please just get a normal serving? Like, please. No, never did it. But it's funny, you know, like now I think it's funny, and I'm like, I would have done the exact same thing, you know, so it's, It was a good time. Yeah, hanging with shades with my daughter is fun. My other daughter, she's into soccer and sports and all this craziness. And raising kids is hard, man. It's really hard, but it helps to have like relatively smart kids. There's that, but secondarily, keep them active, get them doing stuff. I mean, like let them go out and play, let them get dirty, let them get hurt. No, don't protect them. They're gonna get hurt, please. I'd rather you get hurt under my watch than without me. Now they're driving and it's like, losing my mind. I'm like, you drive too fast, you drive too slow. And I'm like, you know what? I definitely drove too fast and too slow.
Just don't get into an accident.
Exactly. I mean, I started driving within 1 year. I had like 3 accidents. Why? Why didn't I pay attention? I wanted to see how fast the car could go. The school bus once, I said I hit a dog.
Because school buses are hard to miss.
I hit a school bus once. I
didn't see it.
I said a dog jumped out in front of me and I swerved and missed. But really, I just wasn't paying attention looking at this girl that was in the passenger seat. Drove right into a cornfield, like ramped into a cornfield. And I was like, was it a dog or a deer, a moose or something? I don't know. Like told my dad some story, and he's like, right. Who was with you? And I told him, I was like, this girl, and he's just like, nah, sure. And then like, yeah, the school bus wasn't fun. I'm like, it wasn't my fault. And my dad's like, it's a damn bus, man. How do you? And so now it's like, we're like looking at cars to get for the girls, for them to ride. It's not like what kind of cars it is, like what kind of car are they going to wreck? That's the one thing I look at, because I know they're going to do it.
Right.
Just hopefully, I mean, the cars are much safer than I think that they were now. Plus they have like seat belts and like, I mean, my first actual car was a Toyota Tercel. It was like small, and I had to share that with my sister. The first car that I could call my own was a 1985 Toyota minivan, and I actually sold
that.
Yeah, I actually sold that thing for $50 when I was in college, and it ran. I sold it to my buddy Ryan Casey for $50 because I needed food. I had no money. I told him I had no money, so I sold him the van, and he was like, $50? I'm like, that's all I really needed, man. $50 I can get like 2 weeks on ramen and cream beans or something. Yeah, super fun. Anyways, yeah, that's it, man. What questions do you have? Do you have any questions for me?
Pretty much, it's just been a conversation. Yeah. That's what this podcast is. It's just a conversation.
This is super fun, though.
You actually, whether you realize it or not, you gave out a lot of good tips and for somebody making their transition and not necessarily to do exactly what you're doing, but to get into a business similar to yours.
Yeah, I mean, ask a lot of questions. Ask. Like, I don't know how to do this. I tell people to take adult field trips all the time. And like, what do you mean? I'm like, literally, if you want to go know how a fulfillment center works, not that say I'm selling something in e-commerce. I need to know how fulfillment works a little bit. Call a fulfillment center and ask if you can come and sit with them for a couple days. Can I go pack boxes for you? I want to know how this process works. And I call them adult field trips. It doesn't matter. Like, listen, if you don't know how to change the oil in your car, call an oil change station and be like, listen, I know this is a weird request, and I'm really a little bit nervous to tell you because I'm a man. I don't know how to change the oil in my freaking car. Can I watch you guys do it a couple times? And they'll be like, okay, it's a weird request, but sure. Like, I mean, you can do these things. And I say it all the time, like adult field trips are awesome. Anywhere in the United States, if you're like, I want to learn how to, I don't know, mow my lawn better. Go talk to the landscaper. Ask them, like, why do you cut this way, not this way? Ask them questions. They'll tell you. People love to talk about the profession and their job, especially if they're good at it. They like to tell you how great they are. Ask them if they can mentor you, like, and just call it an adult field trip. You want to know how to make a good drink? Go ask a bartender, like, can you show me, why do you shake it like this and not like, I don't know. What does that do? There's probably something.
Ask questions. The same thing I've, a little over a year into this, podcast thing, I'm still learning every single day. But I get people come up to, I'm thinking about doing a podcast. My first response is, just do it.
Yeah.
So many people, I think, in our daily lives, there's probably 10 million great ideas that have been thought up today. The problem is people just come up with the idea and they don't take that first step to act on it in any way.
Yeah, I mean, I actually like how you said that, but I say this all the time. Every single thing that you look at within sight right now is someone's idea. Meaning like that's an idea. That's an idea. This table, that's somebody's idea. Why is this table cut like that? I don't know. Somebody's idea. Somebody decided to do it. And I mean, the fence, maybe the only thing that's not is like trees. But why is that tree there if you're in a place like that? You know, it's like, it's someone's idea. It could be yours. Who knows? You know, and then as you said, act on it. Or if you have an idea, start asking like, how would I go about doing this? YouTube is great. Just Google it or YouTube it. Like, how do I change the oil in my car? It'll show you. I have a 2020 something car. How do I change the brakes on it? YouTube it. Somebody made a video about it. And then the idea with starting a podcast is like, I know I asked you before, like what kind of gear setup you have. And I like the idea of podcasting, but I'm just a really impromptu person. And I'm not that responsible enough to like bring all the right stuff and plug it in. It's just like, I'd rather just go on like Facebook Live and like, hey, I'm sitting with whoever and we're having a conversation. And it's fun. It's, you know, it's like, I'd love to be anywhere in the world doing the same thing. Like meet some people like, and follow like-minded interests. Like if I'm, you know, I was a wrestler, I like to go to gyms and work out or go, you know, roll jujitsu or something like this. Like these things are super fun to me, right? I'm going to go meet people in these places that are like-minded, whether it be military, athletics, whether it be you're like playing chess, go find somebody that plays chess, or you're learning languages, go find somebody that learns languages, or playing trivia, what any of these things are. And then just kind of ask them like, what do you do? You're playing trivia. And this guy was like, well, what do you do? And they're like, I'm a network developer. Like, what does that mean? You know, I have no idea what that means. And they start talking about like, how'd you get into that? Where'd you go to school? Do you need to go to school? Do you need to learn? How do you get into this stuff? Cool. And then at some point in time, if it's intriguing enough, ask them if you can come and sit with them. Ask them if you can come and visit them at work one day. And like, can you show me what you do? If it's something that you're intrigued by, and then that's showing like it's opening doors for you to get in front of people, maybe learn something. And maybe it's like following your passion, you know, the one thing that you really want to do. Maybe you don't even know what the hell it is yet.
Well, and that's exactly what I was thinking. You have enough conversations with people, you might end up having that one conversation that opens a door that you never even thought about.
Yeah, it just flips. You know what I mean? I was with one of my buddies here the other day, and he said, you're the only person who really figured it out. I go, why? He's an advertiser. He sells things online. And I do a little bit, not at that scale. And he said, you have your hands in everything and have actual hands in nothing. You don't have anything that ties you to one thing. And so if this line of business goes down, you don't really care because you have this over here. And if this one goes down, there's a problem. You'll probably already have the solution for that baked in anyways for another business. And he was like, and I was like, yeah, well, I don't know how to do any of this stuff. I just started asking questions like, how does this work? How does this work? Okay, so if somebody comes to me and says, I need fulfillment of sunglasses, I'm like, okay, cool. Hold on, let me call my daughter and see you see where she gets, how she does this, how she negotiates pricing, whatever. And I'm like, okay, yeah, this is how it works. You know, here, talk to so and so, and then it's fun. I just have a really good time with it. Meeting people, talking to people. I mean, something like this is like, you know, I'm super thankful. Obviously, coming down and having this conversation is like, I learn stuff all the time. And I'm usually around super smart people. And I'm like, oh, my God, I'm so stupid.
Hey, what do they say? It's best to be the dumbest person in the room?
Always. Yeah, always.
Because you're going to learn a lot, you know, if you're not the smartest one in the room.
Exactly. Exactly.
And I appreciate, you know, because we've played tag quite a few times, you know, trying to get this. So I appreciate, you know, you agreeing to sit down and having this conversation with me. I appreciate the advice you gave. If somebody has more questions, because I'm sure somebody's got something rattling around in their head, how do they reach out to you if they?
So there's my email is butch.hildebrand@gmail. That's my personal email. Telegram, Instagram is easy. It's bhildebrand or something. B_Hildebrand at Instagram. LinkedIn is okay, but if it's a LinkedIn message, I won't read it because I get a million of them. Facebook, whatever. Or I'll give you my cell phone. If somebody calls you, like, how do I get a hold of you? Like, I'll give them my cell phone number. I
don't put cell phone numbers in the show notes, but I'll put your
I'll send it all over to you, and they can email me and ask me questions, or if they're like, hey, have you ever thought about this? I'm like, probably. And if I haven't, I've met somebody who's thought about this, or how would I go about starting an organization or starting a group of veterans in there? I'm like, go to your HR department or do, just like little things like this. And I've done it. I've just done it. And I didn't always do it by way of asking, which I've gotten in trouble a couple times. I didn't ask. I just did it. And they're like, you can't do this. whatever. We already had that organization started. I'm like, well, I've never heard of it. So, but yeah, that's the easiest way. And then, and whether it be me or you or anybody else, like lean on the people who you're comfortable with. If you were in the military, lean on other people who were in the military or military adjacent that you can have a conversation with, that they'll understand. You need to lean on your brothers and sisters who did the same thing you did. It will help. Like, it's usually not going to hurt. So, yes, that would be it, I think. That would be the advice. You put the time in, you did the work, reap the rewards.
Right.
Obviously take advantage of it. Listen, the United States government or whatever government probably took advantage of you. Right? They probably took advantage of you.
No, I don't know what you're talking about.
You may as well figure out how to use it to your advantage now.
No, I never went in the military. I got close. Law enforcement's been my whole thing. But the one thing that does stick out in my head, the one person told me, I said, if you're going to give the military some time, make sure you get something you can take away with it.
Yeah, exactly, right? I mean, and that's the thing, like first responders, law enforcement, medical professionals, it's the same shit. I mean, it's the same thing. Like you go, like I used to work with a bunch of firemen, and I'm like, this is the exact same thing. You guys do the same stuff that we did when, you're holding a fire hose, I was holding an M16. It's the same thing.
Yeah.
So, what do you do in law enforcement?
I work for the DA's office.
Oh, gotcha. That's cool. Sexy, or is it not?
Well, not anymore. Now that I've promoted to management, I'm the guy in the rear of the gear.
There it is.
I'm just making sure everybody has what they need.
With success comes boredom. I mean, as weird as that sounds, it's true. I'm like, what do you know? I'm like, there's days I wake up and I'm like, I don't know what to do. I don't really have anything today. When's the last time you worked? I'm like, a couple of years ago. Like, really? I was like, yeah, but I work in like spurts. Like I have an idea and I go like 10 days straight, like just diving in something. And then it's up and sometimes operational and then it kind of runs itself. And I'm like, well, okay.
That's done.
What else? Now, what's
the next one?
Yeah, what's next? Lots of shows, lots of travel. That's what I do. And
well, I'll circle back to the beginning. Man, following you on Instagram is like following a travel blogger. So, I mean, if there's nothing else, if somebody just starts following you, they're going to see cool pictures in different parts of the world.
I was trying to explain, like, I went 20 countries last year, 20 different countries. And they're like, well, and I was like, Malta, Israel, Dubai multiple times, Georgia, the country of Georgia, Tbilisi, Georgia. Like, what are you doing in Georgia? I was like, I don't know, I heard they had good food. And I liked Asana, so I thought that I couldn't go to Russia because the Russia invasion had happened. Like, I went at the beginning of March, so this happened like a week before the war with Ukraine. And I was like, well, I couldn't go to Ukraine. I couldn't go to Russia. Georgia's right there. It's 30 minutes from Russia. I'm like, I'll do this. It's crazy. But yeah, I mean, the travel blog is like, for me, if it is a travel blog, which it essentially is, it's like me keeping myself honest.
Right.
Like I post gym pictures not because I care. I'm not like flexing and posing. It's because I need other people to know basically that I'm doing the same. This isn't an act. I really live this way.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like I really do this. And people are like, there's no way. I'm like, bro, I go to the gym. You know why? Because I'd like to go to the gym. It gives me a sense of normalcy. In a really crazy world or crazy time or stress or whatever. It's like, go work out hard.
Right.
It's a great equalizer. It minimizes your stress. You look okay and put on the clothes. You decent or whatever. Yeah, it's cool.
For those who've been listening and not watching, we've been doing this interview but poolside at a hotel in San Diego, and I don't know if you're starting to hear it, but the music's getting a little bit louder at the bar. So I think that's a good cue for us to shut this down. But I appreciate your time, brother.
Yeah, absolutely.
All the best.
Thank you so much.
I appreciate you watching. But before you go, if you like the video, please hit that subscribe button. Also, any comments are appreciated. Thank you.